Adrian N. Breitfelder, City Clerk, you are hereby directed to call a regular session of the City Council to be held on Monday, November 17th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. in the historic Federal Building for the purpose of conducting such business that may properly come before the City Council.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to a regular session of the Dubuque City Council for November 17th, 2025. As a reminder to our participants, you can provide in-person input or virtual audio and written input during the sections of the agenda where public input is accepted. Input options during the live meeting include in-person attendees may approach the podium when the mayor asks if there is any public input on the item they would like to speak to. Remote attendees can log in to GoToMeeting using the login links, phone numbers, and access code that appear on the broadcast and live stream and posted on the front page of the meeting agenda. This option includes audio input and written chat input. If you are participating via computer, indicate which item you would like to speak to in the chat function, or note that you would like to speak during the appropriate section. If you are participating via phone, indicate which item you would like to speak to during the appropriate section. All comments, whether in person or virtual, must be accompanied by a name and address. Additionally, written public input is accepted by contacting the City Council directly from the city's webpage at www.cityofdubuque.org/councilcontacts and through the City Clerk's office email at ctyclerk@cityofdubuque.org. This information will be reiterated during the meeting. Attendance for the session is as follows. Mayor Kavanaugh.
Here.
Council members Farber.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Resnick.
Here.
Roussel.
Here.
Sprank.
Here.
Wethel. Here. City Manager Van Milligan.
Here.
And City Attorney Brumwell.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Kavanaugh, I will turn over to you for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Adrian. I invite all who are able to please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our proclamation this evening is Free Community Thanksgiving Dinner Day.
Okay, we have a whole group of folks that are listed right here to join us up at the podium. So whoever you are, come on up if you're a part of this group. I know Jason's there and several others, Tom Stovall, Tabitha Kircher, Bobby Yost, Paula Pater-Licht, Danielle Liebfried, Jason, and Clarissa Klosterman. Did I get everybody?
I think so.
I think I did. All right. Thank you, Adrian, for helping out. Well, if you'd like to say a few words before we read the proclamation, feel free.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to recognize everyone in this generous community who are joining together to provide almost 2,000 meals on Thanksgiving Day. More importantly, these volunteers are providing warm smiles and companionship during a holiday that could be isolating for those without family or friends. Join us at any of the 7 sit-down meal sites and stay as long as you'd like. Share stories, enjoy a meal, and make some new friends. Deliveries will be available for folks who can't get out of their homes. Offering this free Thanksgiving meal embodies the generous spirit of the Dubuque community. We look forward to hosting our neighbors on Thanksgiving Day. Special thanks to all the volunteers, donors, and organizations that are making this event possible.
Well, thank you very much, Jason. And thank you to everyone for the work that you do all year long. This is not just a one-day thing for you. I know that food insecurity is very real right now for people, and we are hearing more about it. We know that you are keeping us informed about it. You're doing a lot of work to make sure that people get the food that they need. But especially on a day like this, it's great to see the Dubuque community come together to be able to provide this. So thanks for being here to accept the proclamation and for all the work you do.
Thank you.
City of Dubuque Proclamation. Whereas the Thanksgiving holiday is a cherished American tradition celebrating gratitude, togetherness, and the abundance of our shared blessings. And whereas the City of Dubuque proudly embodies the spirit of generosity, compassion, and community. And whereas our city has a tradition extending back over 60 years to provide joy, companionship, and a free meal to those who may otherwise spend the holidays alone. And whereas this enduring tradition is made possible by community volunteers, social service agencies, universities, foundations, faith-based organizations, donors, and local businesses who work together to continue this service to others. And whereas this year's event will continue that tradition, taking place from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. on November 27th, 2025 at various host organization locations. And whereas no one in the City of Dubuque should be without companionship and a hot meal on our national holiday that celebrates family, gratitude, and human connection. Now therefore, I, Brad M. Kavanaugh, Mayor of the City of Dubuque, Iowa, on behalf of the City Council staff and residents of Dubuque, do hereby proclaim the 27th of November, 2025 as Free Community Thanksgiving Dinner Day. I gotta give it to you.
Thank you.
Thanks again, everybody.
We'll now move on to consent items. At this time, anyone participating in the meeting in person who would like to discuss one of the consent items, please approach the podium when the mayor asks if there is any in-person input and state your name and address. For all remote attendees, please enter your name and address in the chat function or state your name and address over the phone when the mayor asks if there is any virtual input. If more than one participant would like to speak, then city staff will determine the speaking order of the participants. Please state the item you would like removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and consideration, and consent items can be found on pages 1 through 5 of the agenda.
Thank you, Adrian. Do we have anyone here in chambers who would like to remove any of the consent items for separate discussion this evening? Seeing no one here, anyone virtually?
No input.
Thank you both. All right, back to us then for any discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr.
I
Hood.
move to receive and file the documents, adopt the resolutions, and deal with the consent items as recommended.
Second by Farber.
Motion by Resnick, second by Farber. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Jones. Wethel. Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Roussel.
That motion passes 7-0.
Next are items set for public hearing. We have one, Eagle Point Water Treatment Plant Roof Rehabilitation Project Phase 1. Reset the public hearing date for December 1st, 2025.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Sprang.
I motion that we receive and file, adopt the resolution, and set the public hearing for December 1st of this year.
Second by Wethel.
Motion by Sprang, second by Wethel. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Roussel.
That motion passes 7-0.
Next are public hearings. At this time, anyone participating in the meeting in person who would like to discuss one of the public hearing items, please approach the podium when the mayor asks if there is any in-person input for the public hearing you would like to speak to and state your name and address. For all remote attendees, please enter your name and address in the chat function and state your question, or state your name and address over the phone when the mayor asks if there is any virtual input for the public hearing you would like to speak to. If more than one participant would like to speak, then city staff will determine the speaking order of the participants. Public hearing number 1 is Plan Unit Development Amendment, Wood Street.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones?
did we jump ahead a little bit there?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
What do you see?
We have the wrong agenda in front of me. That's
Okay,
happened before.
yeah, no. Nope, I think we're good. There were no boards and commissions, so we can move right along to set public hearing.
There was an item to set for public hearing.
Yeah, we did.
Yep, that's when we did.
Okay,
Yep,
I'm back.
all right.
Voters are smarter than you thought. Huh?
So we need a motion for public hearing number 1.
Coming right up. Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Jones.
move to receive and file the documents and further move that the requirement that the proposed ordinance be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to the meeting at which it is to be finally passed be suspended.
Second by Wethel.
Got a motion by Jones, second by Wethel. Wally, please.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and City Council. Wally Wermont, Planning Services Director. The request before you tonight is to amend the plan unit development for the Wood Street PUD. This is the Habitat for Humanity development, by updating the conceptual development plan and amending the lot and bulk regulations. This is a aerial of the map. The area that you see that's hashed in black and white is the actual PUD boundaries for the Habitat for Humanity planned unit development. And you guys have seen this twice now. We went through the initial rezoning request to rezone it to allow the PUD, and then a subdivision plat came before you guys in order for you to review for the subdividing of the property. The planned unit development history, that was done in November of 2024. That was that rezoning that I mentioned. And this was the approved conceptual development plan that laid out the development. Includes 16 houses. There's a large detention basin located on the north side. That's that kind of trapezoidal shape. And the additional properties with regards to some detached garages located, I don't know if you can see my cursor on here or not, but to the southwest of the property. This is the proposed amended conceptual development plan, so it's going from 16 single-family homes down to 14. And one of the big noticeable differences you'll see is there's 2 houses, and I'll toggle back between the 2, located on Wood Street there. Those are being removed, and that is where the detention basin has been constructed. So that detention basin is no longer located across the platted right-of-way to the north. It is located directly behind the homes and with the reduction of those 2 properties. In addition, some of those detached garages were removed off the property. However, all the remaining amount of parking spots remain on the site. In addition to the plan unit development, just from the physical changes to the property, we included a bulk and regulation table because now there'll be individual lots, lot lines that surround each individual property. And we want to make sure that there's bulk regulation, so in the future, whoever owns the property would like to make an addition or build it on, there's set standards for setbacks from property lines. As opposed to a conceptual development plan like this, if someone would come through and wanted to build an addition, we look at it as one giant property, and is it a significant change to the property if they wanted to build an addition. This makes it a little bit easier for property ownership, for making improvements, and everything that's associated with the property. So this is that bulk regulation table. It just establishes setbacks for the buildings, frontage requirements, and everything that's associated with the property. In addition, the plan unit development includes a variance and special exception requests to allow them to apply and go before the zoning board of adjustment, as opposed to amending the PUD ordinance and coming back through the zoning advisory commission and the city council. They can go directly to the zoning board of adjustment for that process. So by a vote of 5-0, the zoning advisory commission recommends the city council approve the request, and a simple majority vote is needed for the city council to approve the request. That's all I have, unless you guys have any questions.
Thank you, Wally. We are in a public hearing to consider a request from Eric Dregney of Next Level LLC to amend the Wood Street Plan Unit Development by updating the conceptual development plan and amending the lot and bulk regulations. Do we have anyone here in the chambers to address us on this item? Seeing no one here. Anyone virtually?
No input.
Thank you. All right, back to us then for any discussion. Mr. Sprague?
Yeah, no question. Just more or less, I like the fact that we're planning ahead for future home ownership, that if they want to change something or add an addition, we're making it a lot easier for them. So I appreciate that our planning department is thinking ahead for future homeowners. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Resnick, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. So, Mr. Wernimont, I like the orderliness of this new plan, but does this include green space for maybe community or shared green space on the property?
Yeah, so those 2 areas that I identified in Lot A, so there's still that circle area for the outdoor recreational playground area. That's kind of that rounded square piece of property surrounded by streets located. And then to the north, where that detention area is, that's still a large green space area to be able to walk around and be able to recreate on that space as well. So the intention, when you look at this development, what's really great about it, it's creating a community in an area. It's almost what you refer to as a pocket park. It's kind of the new determination. So these residents will be owner occupied, they'll live in their home, own their own property, but then also have the ability to take advantage of a recreational space in their own neighborhood that they'll have a homeowner association fees that they'll help pay and maintain for that. That's the structure that Mr. Dregney and Habitat's looking at for this property.
I see. So we don't have any, it's not a city park or city,
No.
it belongs to them, and their plans are their plans for this. Right now, it's not exactly flat, but it's not hilly either, is it? It's kind of semi.
Right. And if you had an opportunity to go out and look at the construction of the homes, to be honest with you, they're very efficient. They're walkouts. And the amount of space, so you look at the footprint of the home right now, it's amazing that these are walkouts. They'll be able to take advantage of the entire basement, light and ventilation, upper story housing. But that area at the top where that lot 4 is, that is very relatively flat once you get up to the top. The topography lends itself to those walkouts off the backside, and some of the units at the top probably will not be walkouts, but it does give you that additional space. Especially basement space that can have egress windows is fairly inexpensive to be able to use, especially if you're going to go the expense of putting the full basement in. Walls.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else? All right, not seeing or hearing anybody. Yeah, this seems like I think a worthwhile change, and one it's relatively straightforward, but it makes a lot of sense based on the circumstances that we've run into with this neighborhood. So I'm looking forward to voting for this. All right, motion here is to receive and file and waive the 3 readings. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprague.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr.
I
Jones.
move final consideration and passage of the ordinance.
Second by Wethel.
Got a motion by Jones, second by Wethel. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprague.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Public hearing number 2 is Institutional District Amendment, University of Dubuque.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
receive and file the communications and further move that the requirement that a proposed ordinance be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to the meeting at which it is to be finally passed be suspended.
Second by Sprague.
Motion by Jones and a second by Sprague. Wally again, please.
Okay. Once again, Wally Wernemont, Planning Services Director of the City of Dubuque. And the request is an amendment to the University of Dubuque Institutional District to allow the construction of a new academic and administrative building. This is the aerial photo of the property. So the area shaded in that light blue, almost clear, is the actual boundaries that are being requested to be amended. I'll talk about a little appendage that will be added to that with regards to the institutional district for the University of Dubuque. So properties that are zoned institutional district are our hospitals and our college campuses because that's exactly what they are. They're campuses, they're large properties. They don't function and act as some of our existing districts, but they do have an impact on the surrounding properties, and they have their own special designation. So institutional district is very similar to planned unit development. So the reasons, there's 2 reasons to establish amendment to an institutional district. One is a geographic expansion of the district, which we have tonight. It'll be a 1-lot expansion. And then a significant on-campus projects proposed. So the proposal before you tonight is going to be the demolition of Smith Hall and the construction of a new multi-story educational building in its place. And then as I mentioned before, they're expanding the district to include the property at 2104 Bennett Street. This will serve as a temporary location for security offices during the construction of a new building. So those security offices are currently located in Smith Hall, and they need to be temporarily located while the construction of the new building is in place. This is an aerial photo of the site, kind of superimposed. The area shaded in green is the proposed Innovation Center. And at the meeting, James Snyder, Vice President of Finance and Auxiliary Services, spoke on behalf of the application. He stated that they're seeking to construct a campus innovation center and add the property at 2104 Bennett Street to their district. He noted the new building would be constructed where Smith Hall is now and would have 75,000 square feet of interior area. He said the construction would start in 2026 and finish in 2027. He stated the center will provide interdisciplinary, collaborative, hands-on, and team-oriented learning opportunities. He stated UD will work to comply with all required regulations. So here's some renderings of the property of Smith, or the proposed Innovation Center. It fits in, kind of disappears in there, right? Trying to be able to pull it out with the design and everything that's associated with it. At that public hearing, staff detailed the staff report explaining that the new building is to be built at the corner of McCormick and Grace Streets, where Smith Hall sits currently. Staff noted that the security department is relocating Smith Hall to 2104 Bennett Street. So that is this area here that's highlighted, this little appendage on the corner. That is a property that they're modifying currently, and really the only changes of the property is to put an ADA accessibility ramp and widen the door. There's not any physical changes in the inside. It's going to be a space that's going to be used for their temporary security offices, and it'll be returned back to residential once that's completed. Also at the public hearing, as you'll notice in the staff report, there was some discussion with regards to stormwater impacts to a resident that's located on O'Hagan Street. That individual spoke at the meeting. We had a conversation. She was put in touch with our engineering department or our building services department. I know they've had communications going back and forth with regards to the property. A lot of the conversation was with regard to stormwater runoff, potentially from the Hardy site and the McGovern hardware site. But also the lay and the design of the land where this property is located is almost a bowl effect. And when we look at the new development of the Innovation Center, they are required to go through the development review team process where we will look at managing stormwater on the site with regards to that. So by a vote of 6-0, the Zoning Advisory Commission recommends that the City Council approve the request, and a simple majority vote is needed for the Council to approve the request. That's all I have, unless you guys have any questions.
All right, thank you very much, Wally. We're in a public hearing now to consider a request from James Steiner, University of Dubuque, to amend the ID institutional zoning district at 2000 University Avenue to allow the construction of a new academic and administrative building. Do we have anyone here to address us on this item? Seeing no one here, Anyone virtually?
No input.
Thank you both. All right, back to us then for any discussion. Ms.
Mr.
Farber.
Mayor. So as a member of the Board of Trustees at the University of Dubuque, you can imagine how proud we are of this up-and-coming innovation center and the expansion of some of our technology, IT, engineering programs. And so we're very pleased and hope that the support is there from within the community as it will expand, hopefully, our workforce, and the future of the UD will grow significantly and is really just makes it an added benefit, if you will, and a differentiator for not only the university, but for the city. So thank you.
Ms. Farber. Anybody else? Well, before we take it to a vote, I just want to point out, I was struck by something as we looked at this, and it's the fact that, so few people came forward to say anything negative about what was going on at UD, and it just reminds me of how good of a neighbor our universities and colleges in town are, and how well we work together, and I really do appreciate that. This is a great move for the University of Dubuque to be able to have something like this on their campus, and the fact that the neighbors are okay with this and letting all this move forward in a way that really shows that UD is a good neighbor. And I'm also appreciative to hear, I was going to ask about the comments that were made about the water runoff, so I'm glad to hear that individual's in contact with our engineering department and that's being worked through. So motion here is to receive and file and waive the 3 readings. So Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move final consideration and passage of the ordinance.
Second by Spring?
Got a motion by Jones, second by Sprank. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Resnick. Sprank.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Public hearing number 3 is Plan Unit Development Amendment, Dubuque Industrial Center West.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move to receive and file the communications and further move that the requirement that a proposed ordinance be considered and voted on for passage at 2 city council meetings prior to the meeting at which is to be finally passed be suspended.
Second by Wethel.
Got a motion by Jones, second by Wethel. Wally, one more time, please.
Yes, so the request before you tonight is to amend the Dubuque Industrial Center West Planning Unit Development signage regulations to allow directional signs to be 24 square feet in area. So before I get into it, let's talk about what the heck a directional sign is, right? So a directional or an informational sign is an on-premise sign identifying a premise or an activity conducted upon such premises and provide a direction for the safe and efficient flow of vehicular or pedestrian traffic, including signs marking entrances, exits, parking areas, loading areas, or other operational features of the premises. So the request before you tonight is for 24 square feet. The current requirements is 6 square feet. Planning staff spoke on behalf of the applicant, and the applicant is actually our Economic Development Department, explaining that the Universal Tank is seeking to increase a directional sign from 6 square feet to 24 square feet. Rather than apply for a variance from the Zoning Board of Adjustment that would affect only this property, the City of Dubuque Economic Development Department recommended changing the regulations for all the Dubuque Industrial Center West. Planning staff noted that larger directional signs can improve traffic flow and safety, especially for semi-truck trip movement, and emphasized that signs are primarily for wayfinding than advertising. They also note that the same increase in area was approved for Dubuque Industrial Center South, which is on Sipel Road, making it reasonable to apply the same standard here. There was a public hearing. There was no public input at that public hearing. The commission had several discussions about the company logo shown on the Universal Tank sign renderings and how many directional signs are allowed. Staff explained that they are allowed to have their logos on the sign. That helps identify their businesses. When we think about the Dubuque Industrial Center, we have very large pieces of property. These larger signs help make it a little bit more clear for those truck drivers to identify when entrances to go into their properties. We also have some properties that actually have multiple entrances that come off of one main drive that comes into the property, so clearly identifying those is a requirement. We do not limit the number of directional signs. It hasn't been an issue in the past because they specifically need to be used for vehicular traffic flow and for pedestrian flow for that as well. So with the vote of 6-0, the Zoning Advisory Commission recommends that the City Council approve the request, and a simple majority vote is needed for the City Council to approve this request.
Thank you very much, Wally. Well, we're in a public hearing to consider a request from Jill Connor, City of Dubuque, to amend the Dubuque Industrial Center West Plan Unit Development signage regulations and allow directional signs to be 24 square feet in area. Do we have anyone here to address us on this item? Seeing no one here, let's talk about signs. Anyone virtually?
No input.
All right, thank you very much. Back to us then for any discussion. Yeah, Mr. Resnick.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say that I support this. I've been out to many places out in the Industrial Center West. I often turn into the place and then I don't know where I'm going. And they just have these little signs down the way. I drive down there and it says, visitors parking or something like that. I don't know where the office is. I don't know where the customer entrance is. And because they're big places and they're industrial, so they're not exactly necessarily, customer. Well, they want their customers are the truckers and things. So, but I appreciate knowing a little sooner about where the direction that I need to go to fulfill my obligation. So I think this is a good idea. I don't think we'll be inundated with a lot of signs, and it is an industrial center. So my question is, Mr. Werneman, is yours. This just applies to this location, the Industrial Center West.
Yep, the Dubuque Industrial Center West.
And what about the other industrial centers?
So what is being discussed is we have this Unified Development Code update that we're working on. Signage is a big topic, and this was actually brought up by a sign contractor as well, larger directional signage, specifically for some of these industrial developments. So, for instance, they had Clower Manufacturing down on Cooper Boulevard had to go before a zoning board of adjustment to seek a variance to have a larger directional signage. So this is a topic that we'd be looking at amending as part of that larger Unified Development Code for all industrial districts. That would be brought before the public through that public outreach and those public hearings, and then before the city council. So it is a topic that's definitely being brought up. 6 square feet works well for drive-throughs and restaurants and those smaller lot development, but for the larger construction or larger industrial businesses, the one thing that we hear is like, you're driving a semi and you miss your turn. It's not easy to turn a semi around. So it's definitely more adaptable for the industrial development. So.
I agree. And there's no advertising except the name of their, so it should be fine. So I'm looking forward to supporting this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? All right. I'm glad to hear that we're talking about this in the larger context, to which I figured, since we're talking about the Universal Development Code anyway, or Unified Development Code. Okay, motion here is to receive and file and waive the 3 readings. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh. Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move final consideration and passage of the ordinance.
Second by Wethel.
Got a motion by Jones, second by Wethel. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Public hearing number 4 is Comiskey Park Phase 2 redevelopment project public hearing.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Sprank.
I motion that we receive and file and adopt the resolution.
Second.
Motion by Sprank, second by Jones. Mike, please.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Director Matt Kelsevich is recommending City Council approve the construction plans and specifications, estimated cost of $3,376,900 for the Comiskey Park Phase 2 redevelopment project and adopt the attached resolution. The City Council approved the Outdoor Recreation Legacy Partnership application for Reimagined Comiskey Phase 2 at your March 4th, 2024 City Council meeting, and approved the grant agreement after the grant award at the September 15th, 2025 City Council meeting. Outdoor Recreation Legacy Partnership funding will support recreational improvements at Comiskey Park. National Park Service resources will benefit people who live in the census tract, which has 24.1% poverty compared with 12.5% nationally, a median household income of $37,952, less than the national level of $75,149, and a significant minority population of 23.7%. Federal investment will support construction of 2 additional full-size basketball courts, development of new shaded picnic areas, replacement of an older basketball court, skate spot, and tennis court with a multi-use playing field, building trails throughout the park, establishment of a new park entryway, creation of a 53-stall parking lot, and additional landscaping, including trees and native plantings. The City Council approved $1,697,000 in general obligation debt funding for the Comiskey Park Phase 2 redevelopment in the current fiscal year 2026 budget. The fiscal year 2026 budget amendment number 1 contains $6,848 needed to match the final grant award. Community Development Block Grant funding in the amount of $276,851 has been used for planning and design with expenses retroactive to the project. This allowed the fast turnaround from the receiving of the grant agreement. The city funding is being used to match the $1,980,699 National Park Service Outdoor Recreation Legacy Grant. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request Mayor and City Council approval.
Thank you, Mike. We are in a public hearing to consider City Council approve the construction plan, specification, estimated cost for the Comiskey Park Phase 2 redevelopment project and adopt the attached resolution. Do we have anyone here to address us on this item? Seeing no one here. Anyone virtually?
No input.
Thank you. All right, back to us for any discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones?
just glad I'm still here to get to vote for this one. I'm very proud of what we've done with Comiskey, and I'm proud of what we're going to do with Comiskey.
Thanks, Mr. Jones. Mr. Resnick?
Thank you. So, Mr. Van Milligan, is there money, do you think they need money for any lighting, special lighting with this new arrangement? And there's other things, security issues, like in other, like in parks throughout the whole city. Sometimes we have cameras, sometimes we have those emergency phones, and is that part of that, or does that come later?
Well, we're going to find that out here in a minute. So I don't know if Matt or if you wanted Marie or who's been involved with the project.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Matt Kalsovich, Parks and Recreation Director. Yeah, so typically, in some cases, the regulations of the grant are about a certain scope of work, and if those items are needed, they'll come in under that. We do have camera presence at Comiskey Park now, so some of that will already cover that area. And so sometimes the scope of work is really dictated through the grant requirements. I guess I would look to former Parks and Recreation Director Marie Ware here, who is serving as our acting project and facilities manager at this time to address anything else in regards to those features.
Thank you. Marie Ware. So there is lighting that is a part of it. There's additional pedestrian lighting that goes throughout all of the area that's not currently developed but will be as a part of this grant. There is areas to be able to, throughout the grant, put the conduit in. There's just a small area of what is the park that does not currently have cameras, so all the conduit will go in and the cameras themselves for that kind of, it's a strip along Morrison Brothers in that area. That's where we would buy those separately as a part of another budget, not necessarily the actual grant project budget. So, so it's a fairly inclusive project because it does that. When you're done, it will look like one, you're not going to tell where 1 and 2 because it'll be all done, the whole park.
Great, thank you. And when they say shaded picnic areas, is that by trees, or are there going to be structures, or?
Right. If I remember right, there's like 55 trees that are going to be planted, so there'll be a lot of trees planted throughout. And then the little pavilions that are there kind of by the splash pad and the playground, there'll be additional ones that'll be put to the north, as well as to the south where the parking lot currently is. There would be additional shade structures that are there too. So there'll be a lot of those kind of smaller picnic sort of gathering spaces, and have shade both by a small little pavilion like is there, as well as the trees.
Great, thank you for the information.
Sure.
To both of you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Mr. Sprague.
Actually, Marie may not want to go very far. Well, so pickleball is becoming very, very popular, and at the time, we didn't really have that input, is there any way to save the old tennis courts and convert that to a pickleball court by any chance?
The design itself actually takes out what is there. And part of that is because where they're at is part of that open field, that big open field, because of course, with the rest of the renovation, the field, as you know, went smaller, and now the field will then end up going larger. Then beside where that large field is, then that's a connection of the trail that goes up to connect with Washington Street, so that, people can make that movement in and out of the park. And then beside it is a natural area, and there'll be some additional nature play sort of components as a part of that. So by the time that you're done, there just isn't a spot to be able to put it, because we also had taken the former parking lot area and made it into more gathering spaces, because that, of course, is on the other side of where the splash pad is. So it'll become a really kind of a neat entry and gathering space there as well.
Wonderful. Looking
So
forward to
really,
seeing
there's
it.
no room left, I guess, to answer your question.
That's fair. Thanks, Marie.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you both. And looking forward to taking the next step on this particular project. We've talked about Comiskey quite a bit, so it is exciting to have this vote in front of us. Motion here is to receive and file and adopt the resolution. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0.
We'll move on to public input. At this time, anyone participating in the meeting may address the City Council on the action items on the agenda or on matters under the control of the City Council. For all in-person attendees, please approach the podium and state your name and address when the mayor asks if there is any in-person input. For all remote attendees, please enter your name and address in the chat function or state your name and address over the phone when the mayor asks if there is any virtual input. If more than one participant would like to speak, then city staff will determine the speaking order of the participants. Individual remarks are limited to 5 minutes, and the overall public input period is limited to 30 minutes. Under the Iowa Open Meetings Law, the City Council can take no formal action on comments given during public input or that do not relate to the action items on the agenda.
All right, thank you, Adrian. I see we have some public input this evening, so feel free, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. My name is Peter Arling. My address is 1000 Main Street here in our fine city of Dubuque. I am an attorney with O'Connor & Thomas. Tonight, it's my privilege to be here on behalf of the member owners of Dutrac Community Credit Union. Specifically in regards to item number 2, just wanted to let you know I am here along with Kim Adams, who is the Senior Vice President of Operations and Facilities for Dutrac. Should you have any questions that you would have for us, we're happy to answer them. We do hope that you consider the request and approve it this evening. So any questions, let us know. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Peter, for your comments.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, city manager, city attorney, city clerk, and your most excellent staff. My name is Rick Dickinson, and I am the president of Greater Dubuque Development Corporation. I reside at 205 Hill Street here in Dubuque. I, too, rise in support of the Dutrac request, item number 2 on your action item, and that is to approve the request to alter the Washington Street Neighborhood Conservation District boundaries. And just, I'm sure Wally will give you more information. I just drove around the block as much as I could because part of the street is closed on the north side of the block. But if you look at my little diagram here, this being north, south, Dutrac is here, 14th Street, thanks to the leadership of the mayor and council and application for federal dollars, the 4th Street overpass over the railroad tracks will entirely block access as it's currently designed for the block where Dutrac is located, and a major entrance on the north side will be blocked permanently. There's one access to the property on the west, and it is 3 lanes, one way, west to east for their drive-through. There is an in and out here on the left, but the building in question is on this corner. And it has been purchased by Dutrack, and the intention is to raise that building and provide additional access to the block. The building is a two-story brick house originally that was constructed in the 19th century. On the north side and the west side of the structure is a one-story cinder block attachment painted a reddish brown. The cinder block building was built around the day of my birth, 1953. So as with me, it is old, but it is not historic. So I ask that you accommodate Dutrack. This is one single residential property that has been commercial, that is in question. I respect the Historic Preservation Commission and really taking a hard look at this and asking you to do the same. But in the interest of doing the right thing and making this property available and accommodating Dutrack, given the interruption of their entire access from the north on 14th Street, I ask for your favorable consideration of approval of their request. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick, for your comments. Any others this evening?
Good evening. Joe Callahan with Callahan Construction here in Dubuque, Iowa, 7629 Commerce Park. I'm here to talk a little bit about the permit structuring fees that's coming up for discussion. I was fortunate that Michael Belmont with Housing Service or Public Building Services had reached out to us prior to filing and submitting it to the council here, and it gave us a chance to go through our take on how the new structuring occurred and how it affects us. They already had made some adjustments to it, which was great to see. I do think it's definitely in need. It's a lot more detailed, and it's more consistent through the city, so I'm supporting the structure of the building permit. I am here to talk a little bit about the affordable housing. So one of the, if you research the top things that are one of the most highest inflation for affordable housing or any housing, permits fall in the top 10 contributing to the inflation of houses. A lot of it's, there's still building materials, tariffs, concrete's a big one. Land development is another big one. So the permits bounced between 8th and 5th of causing inflation to the city. We ran our numbers on the projects that we do here in Dubuque, and the new permit structure will add to our permit fees. So we're hoping to see them permit fees, they added another 17% to the end of it. We still believe it could use another 17%. To make it even. My understanding is the permit fees that were collected from the city are from the permits that are applied for and paid that operate the building services department. What I'm hoping that you would consider tonight, because we don't know how this structure is going to work compared to the old structure. This is way more detailed. The other one was more put your own cost analysis to it. So there's a little learning curve that's in it. What I'm asking for is two things. One is can we make an point that in a year from now that we compare our last 3 years of permit collected fees and compare them to what the new structure will be in 1 year from now. I still think they're quite a bit higher, and hopefully they'd even consider a less another discount to the permit structure fee, because we believe it's still 30% higher. I know my permits are going to go from $9,000 to $15,000, for one of my buildings that we're building on Cedar Cross. So mainly I want you to make sure that if you could take the time to publish the permits that were done in the last 3 years and review it in a year from now, or a year from the date that this permit structure goes into. Because it ultimately comes down to the cost of homes, which ultimately comes down to trying to make anything affordable in the city or anywhere is trying to not have so much inflation. You know, so if we can do our little part as a city to not make that top 10%, our top 10 items that make, you know, cost of housing so much. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Joel, for your comments. Others this evening on public input? This will be the last opportunity for anything on the action item agenda, and then we'll move on to just us discussing. Okay, seeing and hearing none, nothing virtually.
Just wanted to note written input regarding action item number 2 was received from James Yeager, Andrew Hawkinson, and Terry Mosina of 196 Bluff, and that has been uploaded to that agenda item.
All right, thank you very much. Nothing from there. All right, we can move on to action items, please, Adrian.
Action item number 1 is Dubuque Nature Everywhere, request for approval of Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Sprank?
I motion that we receive and file, adopt the resolution, and view the presentation.
Second.
Got a motion by Sprank. We'll go with Farber for the second. Do we have Mike?
Yeah, I've just got a brief, and then we have a presentation.
Yeah.
Parks and Recreation Director Matt Kalsevich is recommending City Council approval of a Dubuque Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights based upon the feedback of the City Council at their work session, as well as the feedback from meetings held with community members, including youth and other organizations since July 2025. The creation of a Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights illustrates what access to nature should look like and establishes a common foundation and high aspirations for nature connection in a community. What is a COBOR, the Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights? It is a list of outdoor experiences that every child has a right to experience. It is a public-facing symbol of the overarching goals a city has for its children's outdoor experiences. It creates a shared vision for children's access to the outdoors. It is a messaging tool that raises awareness of the importance of children's connection to nature. It is a value statement and a framework for future activities, programs, and opportunities within our community. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request Mayor and City Council approval, and we do have a presentation.
All right, well, I'll invite you up for the presentation. I think we've come to the reason why it feels a little more like church in here tonight than a city council meeting, which is great, actually. It's great. It really is. It's nice to have the energy. That's already a better prop than Mr. Dickinson showed during his public input.
Hello. Okay. Good evening, Mayor Kavanaugh and City Council members Farber, Jones, Resnick, Roussel, Sprank, and Wethel. My name is Colleen McKenna, and I'm the founder of Lock 11, a local marketing consulting firm. But today I'm here in my role as coordinator for Dubuque Nature Everywhere. And Dubuque Nature Everywhere, it's a community-wide initiative dedicated to connecting some of our youngest to nature every day. And you probably notice in the chambers we have a couple younger residents, so it's very exciting today. And I'm joined tonight by many of my colleagues who have been instrumental in this process throughout the whole way. I'd like to quickly introduce them, and if they're here, I'd ask that you just give a wave so that council knows who you are. So first, I have Deanne Althoff from Hills and Dales, Lisa Feltis from the Dubuque Community School District, Jared McGovern, Wanderwood Gardens, Caitlin Moeller, Dubuque County Conservation, Caitlin Schmidt and Danielle Willis, both from St. Mark's Youth Enrichment, Tara Roddick from Child Care Resource and Referral, and of course our wonderful city partners in the Parks and Rec Department, Marie Ware and Matt Kalsevich. And tonight we're all here to ensure that every young child in Dubuque can grow up with meaningful everyday experiences in nature. So this is a slide that we've shown you before during our work session that we had with you, which was very beneficial, but I love this slide because it just showcases just how powerful time in nature is for children. And as we've engaged with the community, all of our work centered on the one simple research-backed truth that nature is not just something that's nice to have, it's essential for healthy child development. And as you can see, the research is overwhelming. The benefits are, there's physical health benefits, brain health benefits, academic success, and then as far as connection goes, it improves healthy self-esteem, it improves a lifelong connection to people and nature, and relationship skills. And I think it's important to note that this isn't just soft skills, it's about nurturing happier, healthier, and more hopeful children in our city. And so our mission is to connect all young children aged 0 to 6 with nature every day. And I want to take a moment to really break down that first statement. So when we say all young children, at the heart of what our group has been doing is access, making sure that it's not just a few children or a bunch of children, but we want all children in the city of Dubuque to have access to this. Age 0 to 6, which is a very critical time in brain health development and just development in children. So we're trying to hit that key area. And then every day, meaning we don't want this, going out in nature shouldn't be a special occasion or like a special event that you do maybe every couple times a year. We want it to really be daily interactions with nature every day. And so to achieve this mission, we have our 4 strategies. One is inspiring a community movement to foster awareness and buy-in. 2 is empowering households, caregivers, and educators with the tools, training, and resources they need. 3 is collaboratively bridging gaps in access and belonging. And 4 is focusing on nature space improvements that support community resilience. And so since we had our work session with you, during that work session, we've been very busy since then, and we're going to continue to be busy, but we had our site visit from the Children Nature Network and our partners at the National League of Cities. And then this summer, we really dove into community engagement. We did a ton of focus groups. We had a parent survey that was out there digitally. We did some mapping of certain resources in the city to see where our parks were, where our transportation lines are, all kinds of things like that. And then we used all that feedback and information to develop our drafted vision and implementation plan, which we attached. We shared that with you guys. So based on all that, we developed that plan, and as a part of that plan is actually this Dubuque Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights, which that's the giant thing that we have behind us that's signed. And then this slide here is just really showcasing that vision and implementation plan. It's a little hefty, I think it's 30 pages, but it really was like a labor of love in getting all the engagement, all the feedback. And so this is developed for Dubuquers, by Dubuquers, and we're just really happy with it. And it's something that we took very seriously too. We wanted to put a ton of effort into it because we want this initiative to be so successful. So we really dove into exactly what we want to do, by when, have goals, all that. And I think something that I want to highlight too is that a lot of this is aligned with the city's current 5-year priorities that you want, your goals. So this isn't a new thing, it's more this group and this plan, and what we're trying to do is accelerating the goals that the city has already outlined. By my count, it's at least 5 of the city's 5-year goals. So 1 is creating a healthy and safe community. 2, building livable neighborhoods and housing. 3, ensuring a sustainable environment. 4, fostering a connected community. And also 5, enhancing our diverse arts, culture, parks, and recreation. So this is a powerful tool that hopefully we're going to use to move all of our shared priorities forward. So today, and in the coming months, as you can see, our first and foremost thing that we're here for today is to formally request that the City Council consider and pass the Dubuque Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights. And following that, we're really going to work on finalizing our implementation plan, getting that tuned in right. And then as a part of that plan, a big part of it is working groups. We have 3 working groups that are going to be hyper-focused on parts of those strategies that I highlighted earlier. So we're going to get those groups going, get them working. And then ongoing, those groups will just constantly be working on the plan, coming up with new ideas themselves, and then everyone's going to be working together for fundraising and grants and identifying opportunities where we can get buy-in. So Mike highlighted earlier, what is a COBOR? It's outdoor experiences every child has a right to. It really is, it's a promise from the city to its children and families and a public statement of what our aspirations are for the city. And third, it's a critical messaging tool that helps us raise awareness and rally everyone together across the community, whether that's educators, parents, children themselves, even developers, so that everyone's thinking about and understands the importance of nature and children. And so on the left side is a copy of like a poster version of our outdoor Bill of Rights. As you can see, there's 10 rights in there. And some of my favorite are safely exploring vibrant neighborhoods, parks, and schoolyards, splashing in clean creeks and rivers, watching bugs, birds, other wildlife as they crawl, fly, hop, and transform across all 4 seasons, and even just something as simply as sitting quietly in nature and just kind of hanging out and thinking about whatever you want to think about. And then the photo on the right is very exciting. This was the first event that we started bringing this oversized version of the COBOR around. This is at Lincoln Elementary. It was super fun. I was hoping the kids would be really excited and the parents there, and they were just overjoyed and very excited to sign things. So it also quickly turned into a lesson in contract law and that you should sign, read things before you sign them. So in addition to our work there, we're also, you can never start too young with contract law. And so this document, the COBOR, it really reflects the values of our community, and adapting it sends a clear message that Dubuque values its children and the future. So how can you help, both here in council, but also people who are watching live the stream or throughout the week as they watch the rewatches? There's a couple different things. Of course, today we're asking that council that you formally adopt the Dubuque Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights and pass a resolution for support. This act costs nothing in dollars, but its value is immeasurable. It provides a moral and public backing that we need to move our implementation plan forward. Beyond that, we invite council and other community members. We've already been sharing out our draft of the vision and implementation plan. If you see something, if you think something's missing, if you have an idea, we welcome feedback and input. We're going to keep editing that and then hopefully finalize that kind of around winter time. Other than that, especially out in the community, we invite you to join a working group, which we'll be sharing and asking for people to join so we can help move things forward. And beyond that, we just ask that in your day-to-day activities and your programming and your planning, you think about children, these little guys in here, and you think about nature-based learning as you do your day-to-day work. So other than that, thank you, and I'll accept any questions you guys have for me or the rest of the team.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Colleen. Did you want to add something, Matt? Yeah, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Matt Kalsovich, Parks and Recreation Director. I do want to take advantage of this opportunity to thank the team from Dubuque Nature Everywhere. I joined deep into the process and really appreciated their conviction and passion, and this is a tremendous compliment to other visioning we're doing inside of the Parks and Recreation Department and things we're excited to share here in the coming weeks and months. I do want to take a special opportunity as well to thank former Parks and Recreation Director Marie Ware. She called this a passion project for her, and she was instrumental in bringing this to you and to the community, and so certainly I want to say thank you and congratulations to her as well. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt, for adding that. We appreciate that. All right, back to us for discussion then. Mr. Resnick.
Well, thank you very much. So the COBOR, Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights, is really a national organization. I would love to talk with someone specifically, and so it's a national organization, right? And because I was, researching this, and there are chapters in many, many cities across the nation. And so is it, so are they going to help you with materials? And is this something that they national support on this, or?
So there's a couple points to that. So we had help from this whole experience. The reason why we were able to do what we did, we received a private grant from Children in Nature Network, Kaboom, and others that helped us really dig in and be able to do the research we did in the community engagement and all that. They helped us kind of with background on the COBOR, things like that. So the COBOR itself is unique to Dubuque. You'll see other communities have adopted them across the United States. We would be the first in Iowa to do it, which is pretty cool. I know Cedar Rapids is kind of a little bit behind us, so selfishly I would love to beat them out and be the first one to do it. But beyond that, we don't, our grant only goes for so long, so then that's really where the implementation plan comes in, and we're going to be seeking, grants, any kind of other funding we can do, local donors, if you want to donate, do it. But-
So you're setting up a nonprofit then? Is it a 501c type of situation?
Jared.
No, this Dubuque Nature Everywhere was supported by Dubuque Forward, and we've been operating under their 501c3 through their fiscal agency agreement, and we'll continue to operate through fiscal agency agreements either with Dubuque Forward or another nonprofit down the road.
Great, thank you very much. So the Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights is a set of aspirational goals and principles, and it's not a legally binding document, right? It sounds like, wow, it's a Bill of Rights. But what we're really looking for is not, we are really looking for parent buy-in too, I'm sure, because of course, 0 to 6.
Yeah.
If a parent says, get out of that creek, you still need to get out of the creek.
Yeah.
But it just points up the idea that we are part of nature and we should deal with it and enjoy it while we can, and the best of nature.
Yep.
And absolutely, so I understand that, and I appreciate all the work that's going into that. And I was just reading an article about children 0 to 6, sitting in front of the television or given a handheld device, and they're not out there in nature and enjoying life and seeing what really is the world around them. So I appreciate all the efforts that you're doing and your whole group. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Wethel.
I'll just say thank you for, tonight is just a small piece of so much work that I know has gone into this for so many. So I'm really grateful for it. As somebody who on council represents Dubuque County Early Childhood, as well as Friends of Minds of Spain participation as the council representative, there are so many incredible activities that we have available to us already. But as this council has already put forward, our Parks Master Plan adoption and implementation, as well as our Chaplain Schmidt Island opportunities that we're going to have so close to our river so that everyone can be with it. This couldn't have come at a better time. I feel that we're on pace with you and excited to do the work with you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that's a great point too. I really love, we're working together too with the Parks Master Plan. That hasn't come out yet, but we anticipate as soon as that information comes out, we're gonna see what else is there, what their survey results were. We were very particular in not trying to overstep or kind of be doing things in competition with it. So, but we're excited to see all that and what comes out of it. So, thank you.
All right. Well, every once in a while, there's something that comes to the city council that is it just provides the spark of excitement that gets people in the community just going. And this is one of those things. I mean, you all in the energy that you've brought to this is absolutely impressive. So thank you for the work that you're doing. And it really is exciting. I know it's not a legally binding document, but it's not every day that you get to vote on a Bill of Rights, I mean, we get to vote for a Bill of Rights tonight. That's actually kind of a cool thing. I do want to take the time to read them all, if you don't mind. I mean, I just think it's important that we make sure that we have, because it's not that long. But I'm just going to read this Bill of Rights, and then we'll take our vote on it so that the kids can get back outside where they really want to be, because you can tell that's where everybody really wants to be tonight. So, and some of the adults too, I can tell would rather be there too. So this is the Dubuque Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights. So all children in Dubuque have the right to safely explore vibrant neighborhoods, parks, and schoolyards, play in the mud and sand and get dirty, splash in clean creeks and rivers, climb a tree and scale a rock, hike or bike a trail, watch bugs, birds, and other wildlife as they crawl, fly, hop, and transform across all 4 seasons, discover native plants and wildlife, plant a seed and watch it grow, sit quietly in nature, and catch a fish. When I think about growing up in Dubuque, these are the things that stick out to me. These moments of being out in the beautiful place that we all get to share here. So this is really exciting to have this, and thank you for your work on it. It's going to shape and help to mold a lot of the other things that are going on here. So thank you, Colleen, for being here to present this, and everybody for doing this. All right. Yeah, Mr. Jones, please.
One other thing, we haven't done it yet, but at the end of this agenda, we're setting a work session for December 8th at 6 p.m. in this room to present a look at where we're at with the Parks Master Plan. So you guys might want to put that on your calendar and hang
love
out.
to attend, yeah.
Presuming that the council sets that work session, which I can't imagine that we won't.
So that reminder, Mr. Jones. All right. Okay, well, I think we're there. We've come to a time to vote here. The motion on the table is to receive and file and adopt the resolution. So Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Jones. Wethel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Action item number 2 is Dubuque Community Credit Union request to alter Washington Street Neighborhood Conservation District boundaries.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move to receive and file the communications and further move that the requirement that a proposed ordinance be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to the meeting which is to be finally passed be suspended.
On the motion, do we have a second? That-
Point of information, so this
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
and that's the entire motion then, is just to go for,
Council discussion, I thought.
Well, the motion that Mr. Jones is making is a motion to waive the 3 readings. And so receive and file and waive the 3 readings and adopt the ordinance.
But it's not.
So that's the motion that's on the
is
table.
that required? Is that required for this?
That would pass the ordinance tonight if that motion were to pass. So the ordinance that's attached to the agenda item. So that is the motion on the table currently.
So if we so choose, again, point of information, so if we choose another option, we would just change the motion. If
Your
we
choice
can-
immediately is to either second this motion or let this motion die.
If the motion dies, someone can make a different motion.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm going to second that motion just in case we would like to do that.
Okay. Got a motion by Jones and a second by Resnick. Mike, am I coming to you for this one? Yeah.
Planning Services Director Wally Warnemont is providing information to the City Council for the request from Dubuque Community Credit Union to alter the boundaries of the Washington Street Neighborhood Conservation District. Specifically, Dubuque is requesting the removal of the block bounded by Washington Street, East 14th Street, Elm Street, and East 13th Street from the Conservation District. The City Council has 4 options here. They can decide to approve or deny the request. Number 2 is set the request for consideration at a subsequent meeting. Number 3 is set the request for a public hearing. Number 4 is refer to the request to the Historic Preservation Commission for a recommendation. If the City Council chooses to proceed with approval, an ordinance is included for consideration, and Planning Services Director Wally Warnemont, who's provided information for this agenda item tonight, also has a presentation.
That would be you, Wally, if you're ready.
Yes. So, good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Wally Warnemont, Planning Services Director. It's an action item, right? You don't get presentations very often during an action item. However, with the complexity of some of the information I provided to you, and thanking you guys for delaying the discussion, because there's quite a bit of research that went into kind of identify exactly the request before you. So I have a PowerPoint that summarizes some of the documents and information I provided to you. So we'll just go ahead and start there. So the process for establishment or expansion of an alteration of a conservation district. So any person may request the City Council establish or expand or alter a conservation district, but it needs to be through a written request to the City Clerk's office. And on October 24th, 2025, Dubuque submitted a letter to the City Clerk requesting the alteration of the Washington Street Neighborhood Conservation District to remove the property bounded by Washington Street, East 14th Street, Elm Street, East 13th Street, what will be further known as the subject block, as you went through my memo with regards to that. So those are the options. In the next paragraph, what you have the ability to do as you move forward. However, if you do refer the request to the Historic Preservation Commission for a recommendation, the Historic Preservation Commission's charge will be to either approve or deny the request. or to table the request for additional information for a specific period not to exceed 60 days. And based on the ordinance, that is that the commission has 60 days to react to the request and provide a recommendation to the city clerk, which will be transmitted. If they don't provide a recommendation within the city 60 days, that constitutes Historic Preservation Commission approval. The city clerk will provide that recommendation to the city council, and then you would take in consideration at a future meeting with regards to that. So, and then at its next regular meeting following receipt of the recommendation of the commission by the city clerk, the city council will approve or deny the request or refer the nomination back to the commission for modification. So just a lot of process here because it's not very often you guys have like 4 different options to make a decision, right? It's usually a little bit clear cut. Probably the discussion, reason why you had that first motion, it's like, what are we doing here? Let's have this conversation, right? So what exactly is a conservation district? So the Unified Development Code defines a conservation district as an area designated by ordinances of the city council, which has defined geographic boundaries, contain contiguous properties, pieces of property under diverse ownership. They basically encompass areas of historic and architecturally significant buildings, and it is important to maintain, preserve for its economic and social value and as a neighborhood or area of affordable housing. So let's talk about the Washington Street Neighborhood Conservation District. So way back in February of 1975, the City Council adopted ordinance number 7-75. That designated 7 neighborhoods in our community, which included the Washington Street neighborhood. Most of those neighborhoods, believe it or not, are actually city-designated historic districts today. And that was kind of at the end or the beginning of urban renewal, and there were some buildings that are being demolished, and the council wanted to take the opportunity to kind of put a pause on. When this was created, it was like a 90-day review period that the city council would review with regards to the demolition of these properties, because at the time, the Historic Preservation Commission did not exist. So this map I'll be referring to, it's included in your packet. So that boundary of that district that was established in 1975 is the red outline that you see before there. A lot smaller area, concentrated primarily residential single-family homes and duplexes located throughout the area with some additions, some church religious facilities. So there was an expansion of this Washington Street Neighborhood Conservation District in February of 2011. And the council approved that expansion primarily off the recommendation of the Washington Neighborhood Revitalize Initiative Strategic Plan. Can't even talk today. So that plan, had some recommendations by encouraging homeownership, encouraging a mixed income approach to neighborhood development, and creating or recreating a sense of place through good design. And part of that task force recommendations was to encourage homeownership and mixed-use opportunities, while preserving that character or the sense of place of a neighborhood. And when we talk about character and sense of place of a neighborhood, we typically talk about walkability or the ability of the layout of the structures and lot development and the orientation of the building to the street, having opportunities for green space and other opportunities for that. So that expansion of the Washington Street Neighborhood Conservation District, it was recommended by that task force to really expand it pretty significantly, and that's that area shaded in yellow, which basically encompassed the Washington Neighborhood Association boundaries at the time. And when that expansion was created, we notified all the property owners and had an opportunity for some of the property owners to discuss if they wanted to be included in the district, and there were some exemptions that were carved out of the district. One area was Heartland Financial Dubuque Bacon Trust and the 1300 block of White Street, which you see there. They had some discussions about economic development and future developments for that site, which they did make some improvements with removal of the buildings and providing a parking lot for their business at the time. Also Bloom's Scrapyard at 15th and Elm Street, with regards to future development of that site was removed, and that's on the edge of the property. And then later on, it came before the city council with regards to the Dream Center at 1620 and 1628 White Street. A couple of buildings were removed there for expansion of the playground in order for them to take advantage of a child care center for their development. So when we talk about demolition permits and conservation districts, there's an entire process. Basically, instead of just coming directly to the city council, it actually goes before the Historic Preservation Commission. And if the commission reviews the request and identifies if the building proposed for demolition has historic or architectural significance to the community, or whether or not denial of the demolition permit would prevent the property owner from earning a reasonable economic return on the property, they should deny the permit. If the building doesn't have architectural historic significance, or they can't make a reasonable return on the property, they should approve the demolition permit. So it's kind of like a two-part test with regards to some of the requests that come before you. A lot of times, it's that first step is that architectural historic significance, and then sometimes the second step is to prove that the building can't be reasonably rehabilitated, which in this case, sometimes it's very difficult when the applicant is not the owner of the property, because there is quite a list of items that need to be provided with regards to being able to prove that it cannot make a reasonable economic return on the property. So the Historic Preservation Commission did have a demolition permit review for the property on September 18th. They reviewed that demolition permit for the multifamily building with the concrete block commercial additions that were built in the 1950s. That building was in the late 1800s for the majority of the building. A motion was made to approve the demolition due to the property not having architectural historical significance. And by a vote of 2 ayes to 6 nays, the HPC denied approval of the demolition permit. Included in your packet, several documents. The actual packet of information went to the commission and included the minutes. There's quite a bit of discussion with regards to the building being the last building in the block. There's some other things that got brought up during the discussion with regards to the applicant of why is the reasoning for the dirt track looking at taking the building down, which was for future overpass discussion, which is something that the commission cannot take in consideration. They're looking at solely from the architectural and historic aspect of it. They cannot look at that larger whole for the community, and that's where you guys come in as the city council. Also during that discussion was other buildings were removed from the property, and the commission asked at the time, is like, well, did those other buildings go through the process? And back in 2011, when the expansion incorporated the subject block in the Washington Street Neighborhood Conservation District, those 3 properties were on the site. So 1376 through 1390 Washington Street, which was constructed prior to 1884. There's a packet of information included in the documents that are provided to you. Dubuque Community Credit Union, which was built in 1999, and then 1305 Elm Street, which is the property we talked about that they're looking at removing. And on July 27th, just a few months after the actual expansion of the district pulled this block in, Dubuque received approval from the Historic Preservation Commission to deconstruct that residential dwelling at 1376 to 1390 Washington Street, based on the building not having architectural or historical significance. So when considering an alteration to the Conservation District, the City Council may evaluate not only the information submitted, but any additional information related to the architectural and historical significance of the property. But there are no set criteria the City Council must follow when making a determination on the alteration. This allows the council to weigh in multiple factors, deciding whether to approve changes to the district boundaries. This is what you've done in the past for other demolition permits that came before you. So one of the questions that got brought up was, as part of the Conservation District requirement, is that it contains contiguous pieces of property under diverse ownership. Now, the entire Washington Neighborhood Conservation District boundaries is quite large, but when you look at the block itself, all areas shaded in yellow is actually owned by Dubuque. The area highlighted in red is the property owned by Mr. James Yeager. I did provided the information of when Dubuque acquired those properties. So all those properties were acquired prior to the expansion of the Washington Neighborhood District boundaries, with the exception of the one property that received Historic Preservation Commission approval for removal of the building. So let's talk about the Gravinsky survey. So first of all, I need to apologize to Mr. Resnick, because we had a long conversation at the last meeting about the Gravinsky survey. What was the significance or the requirement of that property? There is not an individual site inventory form for the property, but it is identified in an overall larger windshield, which is what you see here before you. So the Gravinsky survey did not identify any of the structures located on the block having architectural significance, with the exception of 1305 Elm Street, which is that area that's highlighted, surrounded by the red block. And then when we talk about neighborhood significance from the Gravinsky survey, it gets a little bit confusing. So Gravinsky defines neighborhood architectural significance as structures that are of significance when found in groups or are contributing to a significance of districts failed to meet one or more of the criteria for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. So as part of the Gravinsky survey, the area was not identified as a district, and the building does not rise to individually eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. So when you look at the overall Kavrinsky district, there are clearly defined boundaries and districts that were identified. When he did the survey, it was a windshield survey, he identified quite a bit of brick structures as being neighborhood significance. And then when you see multiple brick structures in an area, a lot of times those were identified as districts. So when we get into the Jacobson survey here, which was done in 2003, we went through and did another in-depth architectural historic survey evaluation of the area, and we've done 6 surveys that encompass pretty much most of the neighborhoods located below our bluff line in our community and all of our historic districts. Jacobson reviewed all the properties for National Register eligibility, and then also had a consideration for local historical or architectural significance per the building demolition ordinance. And that's where he was looking at the building specifically, if it should be under consideration for what we're talking about tonight. The findings for the block that he found was that there's no properties were identified as National Register eligible, and no properties are found to have local historical or architectural interest. So when you look at a close-up zoom up of the property, you see this building, which is shaded in the purple on there, which is the neighborhood significance by Kavrinsky that was identified in 1979. So when Jacobson did this larger survey, he took all the Kavrinsky survey findings and identified them on this master map. And then when he did his individual survey, canvassing the same areas that Kavrinsky went over, if he identified if a property was National Register eligible, which would be an overlap of what Kavrinsky was identifying and what he's saying to be National Register eligible, it was shaded pink. We have National Register eligible properties specifically that Jacobson identified, and then also National Register eligible per Kavrinsky would be shaded in gray in 1979, which are properties that Jacobson no longer identifies. And then purple was the neighborhood significance per the Kavrinsky survey. So because it's identified contributing, it's not contributing to a National Register district or anything. It was just identified because that's what was identified back in 1979, which is over 50 years ago. It's quite a time frame from that. So what happened in October 13th of 2015, the Washington Residential National Register Historic District was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. That is the area that's got the black outline and the hash lines going through it. We went through a detailed historic survey of that area with Jacobson. And if I zoom back to here, you see that green line. That is actually what Jacobson has identified as that National Register boundary back in 2003. And then in 2015, they still agreed with that boundary. The boundary did not include the subject block because they felt that it did not meet the criteria for inclusion in the district and therefore was excluded from the Washington Street Residential Historic District. The other factors that you guys can take in consideration, and this is the factor that Dubuque brought up at the Historic Preservation Commission when asked by a commissioner, is in regards to the building of bridges to elevate employment project. There's a lot of information with regards to it. The fact that it's going to encompass a 14th Street vehicular overpass is probably the biggest structure that's going to impact this property. We did receive a grant, raised grant, in order to look at some of that development, design phases, and construction of that overpass. And here is and I have to emphasize, a preliminary conceptual rendering of that 14th Street overpass at the railroad crossing. And I just want to note that this is very preliminary and subject to change as the project's designed, because we have some of these nice, beautiful renderings that come out with additional applications, but there's still a detailed analysis that needs to come into play. There is a large storm sewer that's located underneath the street. The design of that bridge may wind up coming into the Washington Street right away, which there may be impacts to how Wash Street goes through there. There could be impacts with regards to the width of that might get into the Dubuque parking lot, which may also impact the access onto Elm Street for the other access drive. But we do know is that there is an alley access that will definitely be blocked off on 14th Street. But Dubuque's been in communication with Bob Shizzle, with our engineering department, as we move through the design, but there is not set design through there. So that's kind of a discussion point that Dubuque provided with their second letter that was included in your packet, kind of talking about their reasonings and the impacts that they have looking for this overpass to their property. So the recommendation that the Planning Services Department has is just to recommend that you use all the information that's contained in the memos, the enclosures, all the applications, maps, and minutes that have been provided to you. As we mentioned, those are the 4 options that you have before you, and if the council chooses to proceed with the approval, an ordinance is enclosed for your consideration. and I'm pretty sure you probably have questions, so.
I think you probably guessed correctly. All right, thank you very much for the presentation and for putting all the information together as requested in our last meeting. We appreciate that. All right, discussion.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Resnick.
Might as well get started here. So it says that Mr. Yeager, there's a Yeager group that owns the building, so Dutrack does not own the building.
I'm not aware of if they own the building at this time or not. I don't know, Mr. Arling might be able to address that for you.
If you'd like, Mr. Arling, yeah, please.
I do want to note that Mr. Yeager did provide a letter to the city council noting that he is in favor of the property or the block being removed, which would encompass his property at the time, so.
Thank you.
Good evening. Dutrack is scheduled to close on the property the first week of December. So they are purchasing the building. It is effectively a done deal. The title work has been done. It's a matter of scheduling, and that's set for the first week of December. So.
Thank you. Is the building occupied?
There were a number of tenants that were in the building. I understand Mr. Yeager has terminated the leases. I don't know. I know by the time Dutrack takes the building over, there will be nobody within the building. It was set up as more of a series of individual rooms as opposed to an apartment. I don't know the details as far as how many people were occupying it, but there either are not anymore or will not be as of closing.
I see, thank you. I noticed that it's a kind of a small upstairs, and they said several apartments, and it's like, how do you get several apartments in that area? It's just by the room.
We have not seen the inside of the building. I don't know.
All right, well, thank you very much. Sure. So if you look at this viewing guide that I have here, I have to say that right now there are four entrances into Dutrack. And if you close off one, there's three left. And so first of all, if I were on Dutrack management or staff, which I'm not, I would do exactly what they would do. They need to make sure that they would like to make sure they have access to continuing their business. And we, in Dubuque, we hope that they are successful businesses. So I understand what they're doing, but is it true then that by looking at it, there are, even if this access was closed, there would be 3 access points to this property?
I really can't answer that question because I don't fully understand exactly what the final design of the project will be. The other thing that comes into play is there's, and I can't speak on behalf of Dutrack what their plans are specifically. As you look, it's a very large site. It's an entire city block for other development with regards to it. But those plans I can't speak to what they have with regards to the remaining portion of the property. But as you do look at the aerial photo, there is access off the alley that comes off of 13th Street. There is an alley that comes off of Washington Street, and then there is an access that comes off Elm Street. You do have the drive-through, which the traffic flow is one way. But it also depends on how the overstreet impacts those accesses on Elm Street, and then also where does the 14th Street overpass land? Does that actually block Washington Street for through traffic? Which then would make some of those other accesses a little bit more advantageous based on the traffic flow through the site. But there's a couple of questions we don't know until the final design comes through. And then also it's really up to Dutrack what their future developments are, with how they plan to develop the remaining portion of the property.
And what you just said about preliminary designs makes me wonder if we're a little early on this. I know Dutrack is forward-thinking, and they're thinking way ahead of everybody, and they want to make sure. But it's not closed on yet, and everybody who's bought a house knows that it's not done until it's done. And so I'm just wondering, it's going to be closed on in December. The other thing is there's so many unfortunate former historic properties that they're kind of neglected for the next 40 years, or they're used and not upgrade. I wish I really knew the condition of the property. Now, it appears from the outside to me that it is not in good shape. If you look at the outside and then say, well, that's what it looks like inside, it has that same amount of neglect, then it can't be really nice inside or, even livable. But I still wonder why. I'd like to support the Historical Preservation Committee, Commission, but I don't, do they have give reasons about, sometimes you give a synopsis about why the vote is how it goes. There was several comments about it doesn't really have any economic use anymore, so that they voted, for this to go ahead, but there was nays. And do you want to give us any, shed some light on those?
Sure, I can talk to what happened in the Historic Preservation Commission. So there is quite a bit of discussion amongst, if you read the minutes, they're pretty detailed. There was some information from a Historic Preservation Commissioner that deals with historic preservation that identified the property as not being National Register eligible if it was to be provided individually by itself or a part of a district. One of the big discussions that they had, I think, was more that this is the last remaining building on the block. As you can see, it wasn't a unanimous vote. There was a split vote amongst the Historic Preservation Commission. They had several conversations with regards to one of the commissioners said, I would like to see more housing remain, which unfortunately is something that's not in their purview. They're looking at from the architectural historic side of things. That's something that you guys can look at. The question got brought up with regards to removal because of potential for access to the site and the 14th Street overpass, which is something that they shouldn't be taking consideration. Once again, it's the architectural and historic review of the property. When they went through, they had the conversation. A couple of the individuals on the commission said that the information that we had provided based on the Kravinsky survey and everything, they identified that they would recommend approval. I really can't speak to the decision because when you look at the minutes and the conversation, it was one way, and then when the vote happened, it was a little bit different than what it was.
And thank you for that, because, I mean, we do have all the notes and all that,
Yeah.
but the public doesn't, and there's a lot of public interest in this.
Yes.
So I'm glad that you can take the efforts that you can to let people know, the situation. So, yes, so I'm interested in what you have to say about that. So the thing is, it looks like, from the casual observer, that 50 years ago it may have been historic significance, but it's been neglected. If you look at it, that's all I have. No one's been in there and can tell me about it. It looks like it's been neglected for 50 years. And so we know what happens when you neglect something like that. Is this just, it needs to be dealt with some good facts, and I'm glad that you can bring what you have. I would appreciate more information, but you don't have it. Other people would have to look at it for that. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Could I add a couple of things?
Please.
Sure. So as you see on the Kravinsky survey of this block, you can see, look at all the structures that are there right now, right? When this was acquired in Dubuque in 1999, some of the properties, there was only about 3 buildings remaining on the block. That was before it was protected by a conservation district. If this property was protected by a conservation district back in the day, it might be a little bit different story. However, there's just so much of the historic context of the neighborhood that's gone. Not only if you're looking at this block, but directly across 13th Street to the south, there's a lot of properties that are removed. And when we look at districts, we look at the whole as structures that are basically tied together. If we have individuals or properties like this where it's a standalone building, it usually has to be individually eligible or of a exceptional design or architectural style. The style of the structure is very common in Dubuque for that. And then the historical significance and the research that we had about who lived there, how it operated, did not rise to that level of being National Register eligible. The other thing I want to mention in our conversations with Mr. Yeager, because Mr. Yeager contacted us quite a bit, obviously allowing Dubuque to apply, which is something that the ordinance permits. He was in a crossroads of the situation where he had some units, he had to make a decision. Am I going to put significant amount of money in rehab this property, or am I just going to approach Dubuque to be able to sell it because I know there's an opportunity? I think at this time, Dubuque was provided an opportunity with regards to they own the entire block and they're being approached, so I can't speak to it. Mr. Arling or Mr. David can talk about being advantageous at the time where there's an opportunity that they could purchase it. If they don't purchase it, there's an opportunity that someone else could purchase it, and there may be a situation that they may need to acquire it in the future. It's just a little bit more advantageous at this time since there's an opportunity to move on the property, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Wally. Just a point of clarification, I might have misheard you, misheard you, Mr. Resnick, but all the documents that we're looking at are public documents. These are all things that everybody else has access to. So there's nothing that we're seeing that nobody else is seeing. Is that an accurate statement?
Correct, yeah. This is
Okay.
all public information.
Okay, yeah.
It is public information, but they don't have this information. They can get it. But the folks that are watching this proceeding right now do not have the documents in front of them. I guess that's my point.
I see your point. Thank you.
Just for general population, the information. That's
Yep.
what I was concerned about. Thank you.
And then, if I can speak in, that's the reason why I wanted to kind of give you a presentation as opposed to just you guys reviewing the memo and not having that background information. It's an opportunity for people who are watching this, or they may want to watch a future recording of the information that's provided. All the documents that you have are part of your record, and it's included, and they have the ability to access them. But it takes some time to compile all this information together. So it's all out there right now. One thing that we encourage in our office is make as many of these documents public. People can go out and find the Kravinsky surveys. They can find all these surveys available on our historic preservation website. However, it's going to take some time and knowledge how to pull it all together. So that's what I get paid for.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing that up. I did not mean that to reflect badly on our transparency, because I know that it is a very important thing to us and for our residents as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Resnick. Yeah, Ms. Farber, go ahead.
So Wally, thank you very much for your guidance here and for so pleased that we're paying you to do all of this because it's really well done. I want to just make a couple of observations here. One is I am very confident that Dubuque will continue to be a good neighbor in that neighborhood, and it really looks like it would be quite a good business proposition and also public facing for those in the neighborhood to have them continue with their architectural design for that corner. The property is not historically significant, as you have said. It really lacks the neighborhood context, if you will, especially as I'm looking at that block. And it's not on the Federal Register, so it's not even eligible for that. And I do wonder about the economic return and the relevance historically for that building. So that brings me to appreciate, if you will, that it could be a great continuation of the mixed use in that neighborhood. And basically to remove it from the district, I think is very smart. It's very proactive on the part of Dubuque at this point in time, and I think it's really going to help with our moving forward with the 14th Street Bridge as well. So thank you very much for stepping up for that and for bringing this to our attention, but I think it's really worth moving forward on. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Jones.
I think it's important that everybody understands what Wally was trying real hard to explain, that the Historic Preservation Commission has a very limited scope defined by ordinance of what they can and cannot consider. So some of the puzzle pieces aren't available to them for their consideration. Their consideration is solely about their impression of the historical significance of the piece of property, not about the traffic flow, not about the access, not about the public good of a banking institution being in the neighborhood, or any of those other considerations. Just that. And taken alone, I can see where they'd reach that conclusion. And I don't disagree with their reaching that conclusion. It's true that we're not at the construction design phase yet with the overpass project. We can't say for sure what'll be available and what won't be available. But we do know for sure that it will impact this site. I drove around the building and looked at it. I didn't have the chart that Rick showed us, but I kind of understood it anyway. It's not an attractive structure. I'm all for saving cool old buildings. This is not a cool old building. This is an old rundown building. The owner of the building doesn't desire to restore it, but he's at a crossroads where he has to do something, and doesn't sound like he's interested in doing something with it. He'd like to get it off of his hands. I don't like, the other thing the city council has to consider is the impact of losing this low-income housing opportunity for folks. And that's significant, and one that thankfully we're working to replace in other areas. So when you look at the big picture that the city council now has to look at, because all those things the historic preservation could not consider must be considered by this body. One of the principles that I have always had in property discussions is the owner of the property probably should have more say about what their use of the property is than anybody else, barring an impact to the public good. And in this case, the owner is going to be Dubuque. Dubuque is trying to be proactive, and they're trying to replace something that the city is taking away for the public good. So I think we owe them the consideration to help them find the best way to put back what they need to operate. And I don't want to lose sight of the fact that here we've got an outstanding Dubuque-based banking institution right smack in the middle of a distressed neighborhood that needs it desperately. And their success is important to the success of the whole rest of that neighborhood and the whole rest of downtown, and all of our efforts to redevelop and revitalize the Flats area, the Washington neighborhood, the North End. So it's a bigger deal yet. So I hate to give up a building, but I'll give this one up for the public good, and in consideration of all the things that are happening to Dubuque as our project moves forward, and how we can help them to thrive in the neighborhood, help Mr. Yeager get out of a property that he's likely going to be underwater with otherwise, and move the community forward in a positive direction. So I'm going to support this change. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Wethel.
Well, I represent Ward 4, which is where this property is, and I certainly appreciate that in the Washington neighborhood, we have a partner like Dubuque to offer financial services and a walkability range for people who need it, and service to a really important part of our community and our residents. Some points that I think I'm contemplating as we make this decision. One is that we have been years in the making of getting to our overpass, and it's not happening tomorrow. We have preliminary plans, but they are very much subject to change, as we discussed, and our design is not by any means final. I wish that we were starting this thing tomorrow, and I wish that we knew exactly what our plan was, but in this time and in this space, we just simply don't. When we talk about economic use of the property, I can appreciate that Mr. Yeager is at a crossroads of a decision of reinvestment versus potential need for demolition. We're not deciding on a demolition tonight, but we're deciding on what potentially could be, because if this is removed, there will not be necessarily in the process an opportunity for any prevention of demolition moving forward, I believe. Is that correct, Wally? I know you spelled it out in our memo, but I want to make it.
So if you do approve this and it gets removed from the district, they could demolish the building tomorrow.
Thank you. The concern for infill housing in our area, where we are trying to create an urban core, where we are trying to look at parking spaces right now that are cement and turning them into housing developments. We're doing that. We're actively pursuing that. We are trying to take spaces that do not have housing and put them there. And so it is difficult for me in that setting of those discussions that we have had so aggressively to build housing in our community to say, it's okay, don't invest in this building, move on. That being said, I appreciate Mr. Yeager is at a crossroads, and it's hard to invest in something that you're uncertain about. But I would prefer to make that decision as a council if we had a formulation for our current plan of our 14th Street overpass, which we do not have. And so in that situation, it's really hard for me in representing Ward 4, although I so appreciate that Dubuque is present and is an active member of the community right now in this space and time to move forward with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Spring, please.
Yeah, thank you. Don't exactly like this. due to the 14th Street overpass, for Dutrack to continue to be part of the neighborhood, I mean, changes are just gonna have to happen. And I expect we're gonna have a lot more conversations in the future regarding other properties right around there, because we just know this is how the 14th Street overpass is gonna happen. So I appreciate Dutrack coming to us and being like, we want to plan for their own future. So I would have no problem approving this. Unfortunately, if they gotta demo the building to make it work, they have to make it work. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Giselle? Give it a shot, yeah.
I'll see what I can do. My question is more Dutrack related. I know that we're working to be proactive, but if in the plans you would find that you don't need this property, have you given any thought to other options, or were there any discussions on other options on how to access the property? I know it's really preliminary. I just wondered if you did any brainstorming on, okay, we get this property and we didn't really need it.
If I may address that?
Please, yeah.
Thank you. So in this situation, I know there's a lot of discussion about what is or what is not designed yet. And what was represented to Dutrack is that they will be impacted. I know it's not going to be built tomorrow, and we appreciate that. We also know that the trains that'll be running through Dubuque are going to multiply very quickly here. So I anticipate that this overpass is going to be sooner rather than later. I mean, just from, if nothing else, a safety standpoint. If we need our emergency responders to get to different areas downtown, we're going to need this overpass, okay? What was represented to Dutrack, again, is the alley is going to be gone, and there's a very good likelihood that the access off 14th Street, 14th and Washington will be gone. I know Wally's absolutely correct, nothing's in stone yet, but that's how it's been relayed, is assume it's going to be gone. I know there's some utility work, excuse me, along 14th Street that it sounds like that stands the good chance, and I talked to Mr. Shizzle and other members of the city of Dubuque. There's a good chance that perhaps it comes into the parking lot a bit, and there's a risk that that Elm Street entrance right at the corner of Elm and 14th could be impacted. So what has Dutrack looked at here? Dutrack is going to buy the building. Dutrack is not going to preserve the building because they need to be able to respond appropriately when it happens. And, again, it's been identified, this is not a historically or architecturally significant structure. Having been down on the site myself on a number of occasions, but not having gotten in the building, there's a lot of damage to this building. I anticipate that somebody who operates and rents properties as a landlord is not going to sell a property if there's a feasible use for that property without investing too much. Fortunately, Mr. Yeager had gone through that analysis and then approached Dutrack to see if they would be interested in buying the building. And because of the overpass project, it just seemed very fortuitous that they went, hey, we are going to buy this property. We will have the block. They did seek a demolition permit. Initially, it was denied. They're still buying the property. We believe that whatever they do, however they reroute their internal access in the property, it's going to require that structure to eventually come down.
I really appreciate hearing that from your perspective. Yeah. That was just very helpful. Yeah. Thank you.
If Dutrack were not being impacted by this, Dutrack wouldn't be looking at removing the property. But instead of, throwing up a stink or getting mad, hey, the overpass project is good for the community. Dutrack knows that. You all know Dutrack's been around for a long time. Dutrack is a solid corporate citizen. And as indicated, they've been down in their St. Mary's branch for a long period of time. The amount of foot traffic they get is impressive. It's probably the heaviest foot traffic location that Dutrack has. They want to remain accessible to the community. They want to remain downtown. They're excited about what the city is doing down there. They're excited to have walk-in neighbors. They're excited to have everyone down in that area and up to the north end coming down and utilizing their service. they want to maintain the accessibility so that their members are able to continue utilizing the facility and they can continue serving the community. So,
Thank you very much.
yep, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else have any comments at this point? Well, first of all, I appreciate this discussion. I think we take these decisions seriously because of who we are as a community, and the historic preservation aspect of what Dubuque is a major part of our identity. So I appreciate that we talk about this for a long time. I think some people might look at this and think, that's just one building. Why are we talking about it for so long? But I think there's a reason that we do, and I appreciate that reason. I think it's very good that we do that. I did not have my mind made up when I walked in the door today on this one, and I've listened very carefully to what everybody had to say, and I thought you all made very good arguments, including Mr. Arling and folks from Dutrack in what's needed here. I'm going to share my concerns first, and then kind of where I think I'm landing. I'm trying to keep track of the number of buildings that we have allowed to be demolished in my time on the city council. And my memory is not perfect by any means, but but if my memory serves, I think I remember a small house on Loris Boulevard, the building that was next to the Dream Center, that the Dream Center expanded their space, their outdoor space there. And then I think 2 separate properties on Bluff Street, one that had to come down for safety reasons very quickly, another one that is now an empty lot that is going to be have a new building on it, thanks to a great grant that Dubuque Initiatives was able to access, to be able to do that. So there's housing that's going in where housing was lost. And it's funny because I drive by those spaces and I think to myself, oh man, that's another part of Dubuque that was kind of lost there. But part of the challenge here is it's not just about the building. It's about all the things that are going on around it. And some of the arguments that I heard, especially from Mr. Jones, Mr. Resnick, and Ms. Farber, to be able to say that there's some real contributing factors here for Dutrack as an organization and as a community service, really, right in that neighborhood as it is. And I think that that's a really important argument here. I do worry about the whole death by 1,000 cuts issue, though. And I want to make sure that I just say it out loud. I mean, I worry about we have to make these decisions in one-offs in this way. But I do worry that over time, if you look around Dubuque, there are places where a council that was sitting here 20, 30 years ago made a decision that has not been looked at easily, I think. Some really big, beautiful places that maybe they were run down, but now they're a parking lot. And, that's tough. I think we need to be careful with our historic properties. We need to make sure that we don't just keep allowing one after another to sort of fall like dominoes over time. So I say that because I want to make sure that I say it out loud, and it's something that I keep in mind as I make these decisions. The other thing that concerned me a little bit when I walked in the door was that there is no real immediate need for this. There's no major plans to develop in the space. There's nothing like that. But as Mr. Arling just pointed out, there is definitely something coming. I mean, this overpass, by all intents and purposes, is coming because we know the trains are. And we've worked with our federal partners to get this grant, to get this moving forward. So I do think that we need to do this, and I appreciate that Dutrack is planning ahead. Where I think I've landed tonight is that I'm going to vote to move forward with voting for the motion that Mr. Jones has put on the table. And I think that the arguments for that have outweighed the argument for keeping this particular building in this moment. I don't love that decision. I just don't love it. I don't like it. It doesn't feel good necessarily that that's where I've landed, but I still think it's the right decision in this moment because of the various contributing factors that are at play here. I do think it's important that we allow Dutrack to move forward with being in that spot where they are, providing the service that they provide. I do think the city's plans are impacting their plans as a private landowner and a business. I do have concerns about housing, but I don't think this is a major contributor to it in the ways that outweigh the other work that we're all doing on creating more housing, and I think that that's important too. So I do think I'm going to vote to move this forward. I hope I don't regret it, one of these days, but I do I think it's important that we all recognize that this is a part of our identity, these buildings, even if they are not fully contributing, that they aren't beautiful right now. They're a part of our identity, and I think we need to take these decisions very seriously and think about them very carefully, which is why I appreciate the Historic Preservation Commission landing where they did, because I do think that they do that. We have good people on that commission that are thinking very clearly about this. But given all the factors in front of me, I'm going to go ahead and vote to move forward with this and vote yea on the ordinance that is in front of us here. Ms. Farber?
Yeah, if I could just make a comment. So on my 5 years, which I think parallels some of the comments that you have just made about historic preservation and the change in some of the ordinances and some of the changes in some of the buildings that have come down, I think that we have exercised enormous prudence in these decisions. And over the last 5 years, Heritage Works, on whose board I do serve, has come to fruition and has come to basically a great service for us as we are looking at restoration and trying to rehab some very significant buildings here within the city of Dubuque. So I think we have a lot going on for historic preservation in all of the neighborhoods that are currently a little distressed maybe with some of the properties. And don't forget, we have almost 3,000 properties here in the city, being the oldest city in Iowa. But I do think that we are very careful, and I'm sure that going forward we will retain that prudence. But I just wanted to touch base with that thought as well, because I understand that you're concerned, but I also understand that we are, I think this is a great discussion, as you said, amongst us, and I think this group is extremely prudent and very thoughtful about decisions that we make like this.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Ms. Farber.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Jones?
If I could just build on that a little bit. 2 weeks ago, we didn't vote to do this or not do it because of its impact on the community and the opportunity for 2 more weeks of community discussion. From that 2 weeks, we got 3 letters, 2 from the parties involved, which are both for it. One disinterested or disaffected individual who is absolutely against it, and for good reason.
Mm-hmm.
And we spent about 40 minutes of city council time in public session tonight on this issue, including some public input. So I think we've given it a great deal of due diligence for talking about one building in one corner of one block. And I agree with Ms. Farber, we've been pretty prudent on these decisions. They happen, sometimes they're necessary, sometimes you can find a way to salvage it. This time, I think the greater good is, I think Dutrack brings more to the neighborhood than the structure on the corner does, and I think that their interests need some defense tonight.
Yeah, thank you. I did forget one on the list, the Knights of Columbus building was another one. That's an important one that I left off the list too, so just to make sure I add that. All right, thank you for the discussion once again. So motion here on the table is to receive and file and waive the 3 readings. So without any further discussion, Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Wethel?
Nay.
Kavanaugh?
Aye.
Resnick?
Aye.
Sprank?
Aye.
Roussel?
Aye.
So that motion is 6-1. Does that pass with the 6-1 is actually enough?
Correct,
'Cause
that still counts as
we
a
don't need to have
supermajority.
union. Okay,
Yep.
supermajority. Thank you very much. So 6-1, that motion passes.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move final consideration and passage of the ordinance.
Second.
Got a motion by Jones, second by Resnick. Adrian, just call the roll, please.
Farber?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Wethel?
Nay.
Kavanaugh?
Aye.
Resnick?
Aye.
Sprank?
Aye.
Roussel?
Aye.
That motion passes 6-1.
Action item number 3 is Central Avenue and White Street Corridor Design Phase 1 recommendation for selection of professional consultant services.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Sprank.
I motion that we receive and file, approve, and view the presentation.
Second.
Got a motion by Sprank, second by Farber. Mike, please.
Thank you. City Engineer Gus Ahoyas is recommending City Council concurrence in the selection of Bolton and Mink Incorporated as the first-ranked consultant, and city staff be authorized to negotiate a professional consultant services agreement to complete a corridor design for Phase 1 for Central Avenue and White Street between 14th Street and 22nd Street, and the feasibility of corridor solutions, including first steps with parking needs and then pavement marking restriping, while incorporating feedback from continued public engagement and a holistic approach. The current available funding for the Central Avenue and White Street Corridor Design Phase 1 and the estimated professional consultant service fees is $1,619,243. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request Mayor and City Council approval and City Engineer Justine Hall has a presentation to make about the project status and this selection.
City engineer, I got a promotion. Nice. Okay, I think I'm good to go. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Justine Hall, traffic engineer within the engineering department. Tonight, I'm just going to present a little bit on some more information regarding the first phase of the Central and White corridor design. And we are specifically looking at 14th through 22nd. So as I go along this, I am going to recap us very harshly on what has been done, and then up to earlier this year in January when we adopted the traffic study, what kind of has happened since then, and what our next steps kind of look like with this recommended consultant. So very quickly, I have Central and White. We had a one-way pair traffic study in 2024 that looked at from 4th Street all the way to 22nd. And you'll see kind of in these maps as well that I do have 14th to 22nd highlighted a majority of the time just to keep us aware of what we're looking at for our design area. So currently, one-way pair, Central southbound, White Street northbound. I wanted to throw this in here just to show us again what the overall goal of Central and White is. We want to have not only along its length, we also want to zipper all of these districts together. So we're seeing Main Street here kind of on the west side with those red blocks. Those are the commercial buildings or rather commercial opportunities, and we can kind of see that similarity in our 14th to 22nd design area along Central. So we need to consider a lot of those things. And I want to point your eyes over to the left where we have our wayfinding sign of just like the gray zone that Central and White is, and how we can work together through these multiple phases that are going to be needed along the Central and White corridor to kind of zip these districts together. Throughout the traffic study, we looked at having a vision statement that, wanting to have the valued and vibrant place in our downtown Dubuque and a place for businesses to thrive, people to live, and a unique identity of the city, using safety, economic development, connectivity, and equity through that process. And I think continuing those efforts through design along this corridor is going to be very prevalent. I want to touch on shortly just the competing interests that we're dealing with. So I will touch on the traffic volumes, which involve our trucks, the speeding concerns, the high percentage of kids in this area, and then the multimodal need that is along the corridor as well. So very quickly here, we have traffic volumes, and we can see that there's a lot of pedestrian activity around 16th Street on Central, and we have 7 to 10% of the truck volumes along both our one-way pairs here. With the understanding that we are looking at multiple intersections, and I want to touch on the fact that we were kind of talking about the 14th Street overpass and how this specific area from 14th to 22nd is kind of our busiest area because we do have truck traffic coming from the north going and using Central and White currently. But if you're coming southbound and going to the south portions or even east over to Wisconsin, we have to still accommodate that truck traffic. So this is part of the reason why we are prioritizing 14th to 22nd as our first phase. Quickly on our speeding concerns, which kind of mesh in with the truck traffic, the speeding of the trucks and the noise and the issues that are happening with the buildings regarding that is a concern, but the speeding is just an overall significant concern because it is a large contributor to our crashes. And also, I will kind of tie into this is that if we have a safer corridor for kids, if we have a safe route to school, which we're seeing a lot of kids in this area because we have Prescott Elementary smack dab in the middle of that. If we have a safe route to school, we have a safe route for all. And lastly, talking a little bit about the multimodal need, we are looking at this specific area that does have a lower vehicle ownership in it. So relying on transit or walking or biking is very vital to to this area and to people using the surrounding area as well. So that kind of brings us to where why we need our change. We know that we have a lot of pedestrian destinations that we want to connect to. We want to make it easier for people to walk through those districts, like I was saying in the beginning. And we're still needing to contribute the freight movements into that formula of, okay, what are we supposed to do here? And we want to continue increasing our cycling network. So Bolton and Mink was hired to be the consultant for the traffic study, and they had a multi-pronged approach where we're having a lot of engagement with our community through door knocking and public meetings and pop-ups at the farmers market. And they had 2 tracks that they were kind of looking at through the technical side and community engagement. And I think that is a very good mesh that is needing to happen and continuing through any of this design along Central and White. Community engagement and understanding what is needed by those stakeholders is very important. And while they're handling those 2 tracks, we're also phasing that outreach and telling people exactly what they should be expecting. So some of those takeaways that lead us into that preferred alternative is creating that sense of place and identity along the corridor. We want to increase the pedestrian cyclist safety. And we still need to consider those small business needs and continue to manage the freight access and emergency access. So this is the evaluation matrix that we had for all 4 alternatives, and we've kind of looked at this a couple times in the past. But end all be all, we came around the multimodal preferred alternative, which was adopted in January, and that consists of keeping Central and White one way with 2 lanes, but removing parking on one side of Central and one side of White Street to accommodate for widened sidewalks along Central and have a 2-way cycle track along White Street. With that, the preferred alternative did have an evaluation matrix that was prepared and based off of the takeaways that we had with the community. So we have 8 priorities here, and unfortunately, because of the multimodal, we did not maximize parking, but there is some addressing those priorities for the loading zones and seeking on-street parking on the side streets as an option for creating that parking analysis. Okay, so now we're up to speed. We're in January of 2025. So now there has been some conversations and very large efforts to get us to a point where we're now recommending a consultant for the next phase of design. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of go big of how we had to look at the whole corridor and how we got to the prioritization of 14th to 22nd, but then what our consultant will be doing here for the next year or so. So, big picture. We have construction. And what I would like to point out is if we look at the FY27, that is the first time that we will be seeing any physical change along Central and White. And that is to propose a new pavement striping plan along Central and White to help with a transition for future construction. Then we have 14th to 17th, 17th to 20th, cycle track. We have the next 5 years kind of phased out for construction, but that is happening concurrently with any design that is going to be needed. So that's what we're prioritizing now, but you see in FY30 and years following, we will need to have those designs for 4th to 8th, 8th to 11th, even the 18th Street Plaza, that is kind of in our design as well. But considering all of that, I do want to pinpoint the 14th to 17th and 17th to 20th, and why we have those in the most upcoming years is because of that 14th Street overpass. We want to coordinate and collaborate and assist with any design needs that are needed for the overpass. So now we're getting into what our actual first phase is. So we can see the 14th to 22nd section is the mixed use piece on the northern side of this map. And like I said, we had the approval of the traffic study in January. Our RFQ for all of this proposed scope was published back in July. And we had consultants submit proposals, and we had interviews with them last month in October. And we are hoping to have a signed contract in the beginning of 2026 with the proposed scope of looking at parking needs. I say technical analysis here, but that also includes community engagement and stakeholder, community engagement and stakeholder conversations that are needed for the parking needs in this design area. That includes that pavement marking restriping design plan for the whole corridor, and then set design plans for 14th to 22nd in bite-sized pieces, which I will get to, and the cycle track design and the 18th Street Plaza design. There's a lot going on in this section. So to break that down even further, and I apologize, there's some words in there, but that doesn't make a difference. So the first thing before any construction happens, we are going to figure out a parking mitigation strategy for the removal that has been proposed. Now, I have been getting a lot of questions that, oh my gosh, is the parking for real? Is that going to be taken away? There is continued effort and collaboration that is going to be needed along both Central and White and the side streets with the stakeholders that we're going to talk to for this next phase. So I have a lot of information on this slide, but what I would like to reiterate is we want to identify those parking solutions for that removal, and we are going to continue that effort in understanding the need and making sure that those people are heard in the design area. We will continue to use the guidance with the Smart Parking Mobility Management Study, and that is also reiterated in the traffic study for Central and White. The second phase, after we figure out all of the parking, we are going to be looking at that corridor restriping. Now, this is the plan to help us paint those narrow lanes. We would even be updating the existing parking because that would still exist. There's no physical construction happening to the curb at this point. And that would also include any pedestrian crossing improvements. And that, like I've said, is setting us up for the future for that construction because we are narrowing those lanes. We are shifting people over a little bit. We want to make sure that they're doing that safely. Stage 3 of this phase is getting those smaller sections into bite-sized, shovel-ready projects that is moderately priced so that we can look for grants, we can make sure that we have public funding available. But the two things I wanted to touch on are Section 4 and Section 5 of this. 13th to 14th is coordinating with that 14th Street overpass and talking with Prescott Elementary. And the Section 5 of the 18th Street Plaza is looking at closing 18th Street and turning that into a pedestrian plaza. Those things might need to be reprioritized, but what I have been also saying is this is a multi-year corridor design phase that is going to happen. So if it doesn't happen now, or we're reprioritizing it because of 14th Street overpass or any other challenges that come up, then it's going to need to be done regardless, whether it happens in design phase 1 or 2. Lastly, we have the cycle track, and we are looking to have the full cycle track designed. We are looking to have the full cycle track constructed all at the same time, because if we go back and we look at each section, the cycle track only goes to 19th Street. So we want to probably have that one constructed in one fell swoop so that there's not any miscommunication, different efforts being put in, and just we don't need the mess. So there is here's some renditions of what that cycle track looks like. That's designing an at grade of the sidewalk protected bike lane that would be on the west side of White Street with that parking removed. So looking at all of those things that need to get done, we are also looking at the timeline for that. So after today, hoping to get into scope negotiations and what that fee would look like with the budget that we do have. We're hoping to get that contract again approved in early 2026, and they would start immediately in the beginning of the year. Bolton and Mink was the recommended consultant, and I think that they would be a great benefit to continue with their work that they are doing. They had a very good interview team that was bringing in the different types of people that are needed for design work, and you can see that difference between the traffic study and the actual design. So I think Bolton and Mink being the top consultant for that is a great choice. Stage 1 would be immediately with that parking strategy and hoping to get that strategy solidified by spring. And while that's also happening, considering anything that needs to be put in with the corridor restriping plan, but getting that plan hopefully by the middle of 2026 so that we could put that painted on the ground by fall of 2026, because that's how we keep the ball moving. Lastly, the two big deliverables that we're looking for are those design pieces for each of the sections and the cycle track, which would be in early 2027. This would set us up to possibly go for construction of Section 1 in fall of 2027. So, like I've said, there is a lot of work along Central and White, and there's a lot of opportunity, and I understand a lot of priorities that are happening along with other infrastructure projects that are in the surrounding area, really. But regardless, this whole corridor will need to be designed and constructed. So if it doesn't happen now, it is going to happen later. And I think this is a very good step forward and will very much engage the public if we do get to the 18th Street Plaza for sure. But the public has been very driven and loud about what they need and what they'd like to see with updates with this corridor. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Justine. Can you go back one slide, actually?
Yes, please.
It's a very helpful presentation. You answered almost all the questions that I had in mind before you started, so thank you.
Thank you.
But I just want to clarify. So looking at this, does the consultant contract approval come back before the council? Remind me. It does.
Yes.
Okay.
At this point, we are going into scope negotiations, and then that contract would come back, hopefully, maybe the second meeting in December or early January for your
So
approval.
sometime soon, we would be seeing that. And then it looks like the next time we would really be talking about this in this room publicly is probably going to be around budget time. Is that like that general time frame?
Yeah, I think that would be a good time frame because that would be the first step with the parking strategy. There will obviously be internal meetings throughout that first and second quarter. If there's any information that is needed, it can be shared. But I would say yes, spring would be the next time.
Got it. But active discussion in March, April timeframe
Yes.
that we'll definitely have some public discussion about this. Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Don't go too far. I'm going to guess people are going to have questions. So. I could be wrong. Yeah, Mr. Resnick. I was right.
So thank you. So Bolton and Bank were they were here before and they did great work. And then the other group was Fair Graham. And you chose Bolton and Bank, right? Now, and I've asked this question before, and I believe the answer may be the same, but there was no cost consideration between these two at this time, correct? So we don't know if one group would have done it for $50,000 and the other $550,000. We don't know anything about costs. It's simply the quality of their work and how they fit with us.
Correct. So that is the true difference of an RFP and an RFQ. The RFQ is the request for qualifications, and then, we do not want them to submit any cost estimate. They can now know our budget at this point because we have it at this meeting, but there was no cost conversation or any sort of cost estimate that was received from either Bolton and Mink or Fairgram.
Very good. So thank you. And the consultant, there's a lot of good planning here already. So, the saying is, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. But Mr. Van Milliken, if you could address this as professional consultant services, sometimes in the past few months I heard quite a bit about our use of consultants, and I was at, I've talked about this too, but you're of the opinion, and now I am of the opinion that we save a lot of money by using consultants rather than hiring full-time people to do this and stay on. And the world is pretty complex, and so these specialized projects need some specialized people. If you wouldn't mind, Mr. Mayor, I know this is not exactly the topic, but the idea of professional consultant services, if you wouldn't mind addressing our use of that?
Sure. So, it's not possible, especially in an organization our size. We're not Kansas City or, Minneapolis, where we've got just tremendous amounts of staff that have all these different kinds of areas of expertise, even though we do have tremendous staff that do have areas of expertise. But so how often does a city do a project like the Bee Branch Creek Restoration Project? Once in 100 years. You don't hire staff to be ready for the once in 100 years when you're going to do a $250 million, Bee Branch Creek flood mitigation project. And it's similar, how many times does a city build or partner with IDOT? We had to do all the land acquisition and the legal work, a Southwest Arterial. Once in maybe 75 years, maybe it's not 100 years. You don't staff up to do that. And how often does a city do a $20 million project to reconstruct their historic downtown? I always like to remind people that my office in City Hall, that City Hall was built in 1858, before the Civil War. So the mayor and council has correctly chosen to look at the traffic patterns in our downtown, a downtown that was built before the invention of the automobile, by the way, and to create a reconfiguration that's more in tune with today and, provides access for all kinds of different transportation between pedestrian safety and bicycles and vehicles and semis delivering and serving all our manufacturers in our community. And this is the kind of project, well, I've been here 33 years. We haven't done one like this before, so maybe I'll say once every 50 years. And, you don't staff up for that kind of project. And besides that, even if you did, there's no way that they could have the experience that these consulting firms have that do it all over the country. And they do it for community after community. And every time they do it, they learn a little bit more and something a little bit different. And we're going to benefit from all that expertise so that our project is going to come out the best project it can be for a $20 million investment. I just think it's good business.
Okay, thank you for that information, and thank you as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other discussion? Elizabeth?
I would just like to piggyback, as this has been something that has been said to me as well regarding consultant fees. Someone said to me, we need someone to put out there why we need consultants, because it just sounds like you hire consultants all the time. I work in healthcare. And if I willy-nilly just made decisions without looking through data and studies and collaborated with my colleagues who are specialists, I would not be serving my patients well. And so when we look at all of our staff and the exceptional staff that we have, the volume of work for them that we have at baseline without this project is very, very demanding. That being said, when we look at stages of important things like parking, that is such a big deal in this decision-making process. I'm not a parking expert. I don't know that anybody in our city is an expert in what cities our size, bigger and smaller, have done to make sure that we are providing as much parking as possible when we do this big project. Because for years, decades to come, the decisions made on parking in this area will impact business and commerce. We look at restriping. Sounds simple. Pretty sure it's not. talk about shovel-ready projects so that we can get federal grants or dollars available through our state government in order to activate those shovel-ready projects. We have to have them ready to go, and we can't do that in a snap of a finger. We need people who do it every day. The cycle track design is very new for us as what I hope will become a bike-friendly community. But we haven't done it before. We need people who do it all the time to work with us, to tell us what is new, what is safe, what is going to be sustainable for a biking community to be established. And so all of those reasons, in addition to fiscal responsibility, so that every dollar is spent with intention that is sustainable long-term, so that we're not redoing this. We're not restriping because something didn't work out. We're not repaving. We're not reconfiguring parking. We're going to do it right the first time. We're going to do it right because of the consultants telling us how to do it. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Sprank?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I've been advocating for this project since 19 because it fell apart by my predecessor, and just we know we need to redo Central and White. We know we need to do this so we can get more economic development in the neighborhood, and it'll help, and this is part of it, and it's just part of the very long process. I'm glad we're going to hopefully approve this and move forward on it because we know we need to do this. So I'll be definitely supporting it. I'm going to be really interested to see how the restriping goes. Just the psychology of it that I've been hearing from other communities that have changed. Just a solid line instead of broken lines. It just gives this visual for folks that makes them think differently. So, and because this has been such a high traffically used area, people have to literally get used to changing how the traffic pattern is going to flow and such. So I'm excited to see that, and it'll be interesting as we move forward with it. So looking forward. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Well, motion here is to receive and file and approve the selection of Bolton Mink as the consultants on this project. So with that said, thank you very much, Justine, for the presentation. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Action item number 4 is Ambassador Court Storm Sewer Replacement Project Award Public Improvement Contract.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Wethel.
I move to receive and file and adopt the resolution.
Second by Sprank.
Motion by Wethel, second by Sprank. Mike, please.
Thank you. City Engineer Gus Zahoyas is recommending City Council award the public improvement contract for the Ambassador Court Storm Sewer Replacement Project to temporarily excavating of East Dubuque in the amount of $113,629.65 through the adoption of the attached resolution. The bid amount is 15.93% below the engineer's revised estimate. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request Mayor and City Council approval.
Thank you, Mike. Any discussion? Ms. Farber.
Yeah, we had talked about this previously, and again, just a shout out to all of the residents who had taken the time to communicate with the city their concerns and to actually do a walkthrough to show us exactly where the overflow was. So looking forward to getting this resolved for them. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Okay. Motion here is to receive and file and adopt the resolution. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Resnick. Sprank.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Action item number 5 is request for ordinance modification, City Code 776 bicycle lighting requirements.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move to receive and file the communications and further move that the requirement that a proposed ordinance be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to the meeting of which is to be finally passed be suspended.
Second by Wethel.
Motion by Jones, second by Wethel. Mike, please.
Thank you. Chief of Police Jeremy Jensen is recommending City Council approve the amendment to the city code which currently limits bicycle lighting requirements to use on public streets. The proposed change seeks to extend these requirements to include sidewalks, parks, and trails to enhance public safety for both bicyclists and pedestrians. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request Mayor and City Council approval.
Thank you, Mike. Discussion, Mr. Sprink.
I have a question. I know we all know what a bicycle is, but are we looking at e-bikes as well as scooters for this? Because that seems to be a thing that I hear about a lot from my neighbors. Kids just flying down the sidewalk, cutting through alleys, just not seeing them. There's been accidents. Yeah, so.
Yes, all the above. Jeremy Jensen, Chief of Police. E-bikes are considered in this. They're considered a bicycle. So anything that is not considered, so an e-bike is anything 750 watts or less, or 25 miles an hour less. Can't be going faster than that. Anything above that is considered a motorcycle, and then it becomes a whole nother thing. So they would be covered.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Resnick.
Thank you. So, Chief, bike safety is so important. It's when I read about the problems that we have in Dubuque with bikers getting run over, or half the time it's the bikers themselves, bicyclists, who did something that was a part of the problem. A part of the reason that there was this collision was that the bicyclist made a decision that was probably would like to be rethought, right? So, and I would love to, there are more bicycles on the streets right now than in the past 10 years, which is great. But with that, I think there is the need for instruction in bike safety. It's not just, people get very relaxed when they're on the bike. So I was just wondering if perhaps that the school resource officers might help us at an early age. Do they have a possibility perhaps of when they visit schools to have some kind of a gathering that talks about, hello, I'm your friendly school resource officer, and first let's talk about, we want to keep you safe and your friends, so let's talk about bike safety. Is that being considered at all?
Yes, it absolutely is. It's one of the talks we've had, and as e-bikes have become more popular, and I think absolutely to your point about safety, bikes are unique because when bikes are on the street, they're supposed to operate just like motor vehicles. Stop for stop signs, stop for stop lights, signal turns, all these things. That just doesn't happen. And so that's where we start to see that. But back to your point, the school resource officers, we did talk about that early with the elementary side when we talk about safety in general, that bicycle safety is one of the things to discuss.
I would love it in that, first of all, so as a paper boy, as you might imagine, and so it was great to have a light. I felt pretty cool when I had a light on my bike, but it was those big, things that are permanently mounted. And now the bikes, if you have a light, sometimes you have to take your bike with you because they're so easy to steal. So I wish there was a way that we could get these bikes out, lights out to people, and maybe connect that with some kind of instruction that they've gone through, the safety instruction. If they go through the safety course or just pass out on even an online, that maybe we can help them. Because that is going to be, another $20 in front and another $15 in back for the red lights. So maybe, and where do you get that stuff? Well, we know of a couple bike stations, but a lot of people, if it's not in their neighborhood, what are you going to do? I mean, I suppose you could buy them online, but I'd love to have that connection. Is that thought of too? Is about how we can get this safety equipment into the hands of the people who need it?
Yeah, and that has been. Historically, we've had grants for safety equipment. So we've had helmet grants. We've had bike giveaways that included safety things. And what was interesting with the bike giveaways, a lot of times we required the safety briefing, and people would not take the bike if they had to go through the safety briefing. So it was kind of disappointing in some of those aspects. But yeah, we're always looking for abilities, and we see that sometimes through the Governor's Traffic Safety Bureau, some bicycle stuff. Haven't seen that as part of our grant in the last few years, but we've also seen some stuff from the national side of that to be able to do some safety equipment. So we'd always be willing to do that, and the way we handed out before is if we'd find kids or whatever riding without a helmet, we'd get them a helmet, so it's real easy to do.
Great, and I know this is just extending what is expected already on the street, and then put it on the bike trails and on the sidewalk where these are. So I think that's a very reasonable thing. Something to think about. I just remember being a kid thinking, I'm going to turn off the light because I don't want to be a sitting duck. If somebody sees me coming from a block away, they can be ready to get me, and you always think somebody's trying to get you. At least I did. I know there's a medical condition for that, but I sometimes think that I don't want people to see me. So, but I mean, it is, safety is an important thing. And so I hope we can make this work, and I appreciate and I will support this tonight. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Jones.
Yeah, back when this ordinance was passed that required lighting on the front of a bike and reflector on the back of a bike, bikes were only allowed on streets. And the thinking on that has changed, the practice of that has changed. The other neat thing that's changed is even that big light that you had on your bike, batteries were dead in a couple hours, didn't really light up the street or do much for you. With the LED technology that's out there today, it's pretty amazing how much light you can get out of a 9-volt battery for days sometimes. And there's all kinds of ways to do it. There's lights on your, you could wear a lighted vest and be compliant with the ordinance. You could wear a lighted helmet and be compliant with the ordinance. You could mount the hardware to your bicycle. But this is a good change. It's going to cost people a few bucks to put the safety equipment on their bicycles, but it might just save their life, and that's worth a few bucks.
Thanks, Mr. Jones. How are people going to know about this, Chief? What are we going to do to make sure that they know?
Yeah, we'll start doing like we normally do for the how we put information out. Generally, our social media is the best way we do that. And then there's word of mouth as officers are coming across. This came from our night shift. One of our night shift corporals identified this and said, I think this is an issue that we need to address. So we'll put it back on them to get the word out, the ones that are out there during the night, and say, hey, let's get this out and let people know on that. You know, before we're kind of a little bit of a gray area. You can ride on the sidewalks and do that now, or even the trails. I mean, that happens too. And we just don't want our bikes and pedestrians on particularly narrow sidewalks don't always mix well. So,
well, I appreciate that, and appreciate the corporal being vocal about that. But and Mike, I think this goes without saying, but I'm sure our communications department is going to be on this and making sure that people know about it and getting the word out, because this will be a change that people want to know about. Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Mr. Jones.
This is almost completely unrelated, but as a person that drives Grandview Avenue frequently in the dark, which is frequented by all kinds of runners and joggers all the time, I can't tell you how much I personally appreciate the folks that care enough about themselves to put some lights in their bodies or wear reflective wear. Once in a while, you still run into the person who is disguised as pavement running down the middle of the street, and there's not much of them to see in the middle of the night. But be nice if more people would do that for us.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Jones. All right. Well, thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Motion here is to receive and file and waive the 3 readings for this ordinance. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move final consideration and passage of the ordinance.
Second by Wethel.
Motion by Jones, second by Wethel. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye. Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Action item number 6 is proposed changes to permitting and valuation practices.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Sprank.
I motion that we receive and file and approve.
Second.
Motion by Sprank, second by Farber. Mike, please.
Thank you. Assistant Housing and Community Development Director Michael Belmont is recommending City Council approval for the revised permit valuation model for new construction and fee proposal change to the permitting fee structure for residential alterations, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing permits, and solar and swimming pool permits. The purpose of this proposal is to not increase revenues, but to establish a predictable and transparent framework for determining construction valuations. We recognize that some individual project valuations will rise while others may decrease. Overall, our goal is to achieve a net zero or net zero impact on total permit revenue. We propose implementing the new calculated valuation model for new construction on December 1st, 2025, to coincide with the launch of the Citizen Serve permitting software. We have already met with several contractors to discuss the proposed model and if approved, we will share detailed information with all registered contractors and builders prior to implementation. The Building Code Advisory and Appeals Board unanimously has approved this recommendation. And relating to the comments of Joel Callahan earlier tonight, we're on the exact same page with him. I'll just quote from the memo from staff. If the new model is approved, staff will closely monitor valuation trends and permit revenue throughout the first year. If the data shows a meaningful deviation from prior year revenues that can be attributed to valuations, either higher or lower, we will return to the City Council with recommendations for adjustments to ensure that the intent to remain revenue neutral is maintained. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request Mayor and City Council approval.
Thank you, Mike. All right. Did you have a presentation too, Mike?
Mike Belmont, Assistant Director, Housing and Community Development Department. I do have just a quick presentation. It's really talking points that we'll go through. I'll try to do it relatively quickly. I know we're getting later in the evening. Oop, there it is. Should be popping up here any second.
Here it comes.
All right. All right, so I'll just kind of start with the why. Why are we looking at this? I think the short answer to that is, you know, as a city and as a department, we're always trying for continuous improvement. We know we can always do better, right? And one of the things that we looked at that you've heard us talk about is the Citizen Serve software. That's a way that we are improving rental licensing, and we're planning on improving construction permitting and inspections. And other departments are also using it as an improvement. And so that gave us the opportunity to kind of look at all of our processes and at the same time kind of look at our fee structures and how we're putting things together. And in that evaluation, a couple things came up. One of them was just the really inconsistent valuations for new construction projects, right? And then the other one was looking at our MEP permits, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. They're pretty complex. They're complex for contractors to fill out. They're complex for people to understand how to fill them out and turn them in correctly. Staff was getting a lot of questions about just how to fill out the permit, right? And that's, you know, that's not our goal. We're trying to make things simple. We're trying to make things transparent. We're trying to make things efficient. So we looked at those things. The first challenge was the inconsistent project valuations. Looking at other communities, a lot of communities use what's called a building valuation data table. So basically that's a table that the ICC publishes 2 times a year, and they come up with average valuations for construction projects based on construction type and occupancy type. This is primarily for commercial projects, but it does establish a baseline. And so what we did is we took that as a concept. We said, hey, let's look at those tables. Let's apply that to previous permits, and let's see where we land. And in doing that valuation, that comparison, I looked at about 20 months worth of permits. And doing that valuation, it became evident very quickly that just using the valuation tables as published by the ICC was not going to provide valuations that are consistent with what we've been getting in the past. And when I say consistent, meaning on average, we want to be in the same neighborhood that we've been. What using a valuation table does is kind of say everybody that's doing this kind of construction project, they can use this number for their square footage and provide a consistent valuation. They will know what their their permit's going to be based on. Okay? Providing that consistency is the goal. One of the things that we also know locally is that we permit mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection separately. So the building valuation tables included those numbers. So we also had to make another adjustment to kind of pull out, on average, the cost for mechanical, electrical, plumbing, because those valuations are captured separately on separate permit applications. And so looking at a number of around 20%, we've got to consistent valuations with what we've been provided in the past for building-only permit valuations. When looking at residential separately, in residential construction, there's a lot of different valuations for different types of construction, right? Think about your unfinished basement costs a lot less than your finished basement. Your main floor construction typically costs more than your second floors and above because that main floor has more rooms, has higher level finishes, has other things, right? The construction type is a little different usually on the main floor, so that cost is more. So we went to the effort of breaking down for residential valuations, breaking that down even further by area types. Again, main floor, second floor and above, finished basements, unfinished basements, decks, and covered porches. One of the things that we discovered as doing this analysis, looking at 20 months worth of permits, was that the outlier really was, in commercial projects, was Group R occupancies. Group R occupancy includes things like multifamily dwellings, assisted living facilities, hotels. Those are all in Group R, right? And trying to do the analysis, they were really coming in as an outlier. The valuations that we've been provided over the last 20 months for those type of projects, even with that 20% reduction off of the building valuation data table, was still coming in much higher. And so one of the solution that we came up with to rectify that was to have an additional reduction from the building valuation data table of 17% for Group R occupancies. Now, I appreciate Mr. Callahan coming up here and kind of talking to you about this. I mean, that's why we engaged with him. And he's correct in that his permit valuations will go up. But I can tell you, we did all of the Group R together, and we came to a valuation that was 0.08% different than what we have received historically. Our goal really is to keep things neutral or relatively net neutral, and establish this consistent valuation model. One of the things that we're going to do also is on the residential side, once the valuation is determined for alterations, those valuations will be put into fee buckets, we'll call them, or fee ranges, so that if your project is between $0 and $5,000, your permit cost is going to be $50. If it's between $5,000 and $25,000, it's going to be the next level. There's ranges for that. And so that provides clarity and consistency and predictability, I think is the key word, for contractors and homeowners as well. You just kind of know that if this is the range of your project, this is what the cost is going to be. In this evaluation, one of the things that we did also notice was that window replacement projects in particular had this wildly crazy range of valuations that were provided. And the whole point of the permit fee is to cover the cost of our program, our administration, and our inspection program. And so having this wide range of valuations really doesn't make any sense. And so in that particular case, when we have these frequently permitted items, we decided that, or we considered the option of having a fixed fee per item model for those type of projects. Again, if a window contractor is doing a project and they know that they have 15 windows, they know exactly what that permit's going to cost. There is no incentive for them to give us a lower valuation. They know what it's going to cost. Similar concept with solar and pools. We went to a flat fee for those types of projects. The second challenge that we talked about was the complexity of our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing permits. The reason they were complex is because they include a tremendous amount of things that you have to check off to turn in your application. You have to tell us exactly how many of these and how many of those and what these are. And, you know, and I'm being very vague here, but an example I gave in the memo was on the electrical permit, you know, you had to write down how many outlets you were providing. Well, I can tell you our inspectors are not going out and counting outlets. You know, they're looking at the wiring, they're looking at the panel, they're looking at things that are in the code, and why make it that complex for contractors to fill out the applications, right? Mechanical, electrical, plumbing contractors, in almost all cases, a licensed contractor is required to pull a permit. And so those contractors know what their costs are. They know what their valuation should be. And so for those permits, we're asking for stated valuation. And then for commercial, we have an MEP fee table that's consistent across mechanical, electrical, plumbing, same table that they can use. And for residential, we have that same concept of the buckets. If it's 0 to 5,000, it's this much. There's steps for that. Again, simplifying the process. For mechanical, electrical, plumbing, we also have some things that are frequently permitted. Think about air conditioning and furnace replacements. Those happen all the time. And so having a fixed fee for that makes a lot of sense. Provides clarity, provides consistency. Our inspection, you know, for a furnace and air conditioning replacement is exactly the same for everyone. It doesn't matter whether it's a 2-ton air conditioner or a 4-ton air conditioner. Our inspection process is exactly the same. So we did take, as Mike mentioned, we did take this to the Building Code Advisory Appeals Board. We did take it to them twice. We kind of brought the preliminary concept. At the original meeting, we got some feedback, and so we kind of went back and looked at it again and made some adjustments. In the first meeting, one of the things that we had was a $75 fee for the first unit for a furnace and air conditioning or mechanical replacement, and $25 for each additional, and realized that that was maybe too high, because right now a furnace and air conditioning replacement costs $75. So we went back to the drawing board, looked at that again, brought that number down to 50 for the first, 25 for the second, to try to, again, keep consistent with what we've done in the past. We did hold meetings with mechanical, electrical, plumbing contractors. Without exception, they all liked the simplicity of what we were proposing. The only concern that was given was for furnace and air conditioning replacements, were they going to have to tell us what their costs were, because it's a very competitive business. They didn't want to produce that. And with the unit costs, that takes that out of the equation. They just have to tell us how many units they're providing. We've already talked about intended outcomes. Again, just consistency, predictability, clarity, transparency. We're trying to do all those things, all those buzzwords that we all love. But in this case, we really are trying to make it easy for contractors to get online, turn in their applications, pay their fees. Right now, that's going back to the citizen-served model. That is something that, while we do currently have the possibility to pay your fees online, it is such a complex and convoluted process that nobody does it. This will change that. It's very easy to go online with CitizenServe, pay for your fees, take care of your permits, and see where your inspections are and the comments from the inspectors, et cetera. So when I say improved customer experience, I think that's part of it, is the software and these fee proposal changes. Measuring outcomes, we decided to start looking at these and how can we tell, if we're doing a good job. This first line, first submittal permitting, reduction in pre-application questions. We get a lot of questions about what's the right value, or somebody submits a value and we go, something's not right there. You either gave us a much too high of a number or much too low, and we're spending quite a bit of time going back and forth with contractors trying to get that sorted out. And so that could help reduce those questions initially. We want to be consistent and fair across all similarly sized projects, similar types of projects, similar sized projects. The customer feedback, I think, I'm not sure exactly how we'll measure that, but I think that's related to the software primarily. I can tell you that just anecdotally, we had some permit clerks at the Permit Tech Nation, a Permit Tech meeting this week, and several of the users there use Citizen Serve, and overwhelmingly, the people that use Citizen Serve like it and are happy with it. So got some good feedback. We got some good feedback on that. So. And then, of course, revenue neutrality, that is our goal. It really is our goal. We understand that some are going to be higher, some are going to be lower, but trying to keep that consistent. All right. Any questions?
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Mike. I got a couple to start with. First and foremost, I mean, permitting in really in its basic form is about safety, right? I mean, it's about making sure that we're tracking the safety of things and making sure people aren't getting hurt and making sure the places aren't blowing up and all kinds of stuff. That's not being sacrificed in more for the sake of efficiency in this case, right?
Not at all. Our inspection process will not change at all.
Okay.
So no.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure I asked that question, just because of the fact that you know, when you make things more efficient, sometimes you sacrifice in other places. But I'm glad to hear that. Is this generally in line with what other cities are doing, or is this something that we're just kind of off doing on our own? Do you know? I mean, is this kind of similar to how other cities handle this?
There are many other cities that use a building valuation model. They use the building valuation table. Some of them use it unaltered. They may adjust their fees differently, but there are many other cities that use this as a model. Yep.
Got it. Okay. Yep. All right. And then my final question to start with, and then I'll open it up. And Joel, thank you very much for being here tonight and speaking up. I appreciated the conversation that you started here with, you know, talking about the cost, because that was my biggest concern as I looked at this originally, is what Mr. Callahan was bringing up, was this idea that if this starts to get out of whack in some way, and it is raising the costs for people who are building, then thus raising the costs for people who need to pay for housing in particular. How are we going to make sure, you kind of outlined it a little bit there, but how are we really going to make sure that in the next 6 months and 12 months, we're keeping track of this very carefully, so we don't hear about it only after somebody's upset about it? You know what I'm saying? So like it happens so much to one particular builder and they don't know who to complain to, for lack of a better word, and they're upset 6 months in because their costs just keep rising. How are we going to track that to make sure that we're paying close attention to it and costs aren't just being inflated for individual developers and contractors in this case?
Right. So building permit data is public information, and so it will be out there for consumption. And if we get off track, we will definitely hear about it. But we also plan to make sure we monitor the values. One of the things that is a challenge, I'll be perfectly frank with you, is that building permitting there's ebbs and flows constantly, right?
Sure.
So one year can be considerably more than the previous year. We're currently experiencing that right now. There was an article in the Business Times about how good business is right now. A lot of permits in town. So what we will do is look at similarly sized projects and compare them to previously permitted projects. That's essentially how we came to this model, but we'll continue to do that to make sure that we're not getting out of line.
Okay. And I'm imagining that that's probably going to be something that we talk about a little bit, at least, when you come before us to talk about with the Housing and Community Development Department and the budget process in April. You might give us a bit of an update at that time. Would you have enough data to go on at that point, or
by then
early?
We should have some data that we can certainly speak to. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a helpful thing to include in the presentation, since we talk about pretty much everything during those. So thank you. Okay. Yeah, Mr. Spring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mike, I like this because, one, as a retired contractor, basically this is similar to like what Galena did, Davenport, Muscatine, Clinton, this nice bracket system. It's easier when you're trying to throw together a number, especially when you're estimating. So no, I'm appreciative that you're kind of looking out to mimic what other communities are doing as well. So thank you.
Ms. Farber first.
Yes, thank you. So I want to ditto all the comments relating to Mr. Callahan and his guidance, if you will, on making sure that there's a use case and a test for us in 6 to 9 months, if you will. And I also wanted to just really appreciate the great benefit to the users from a technological perspective, and the fact that the benefits of using the technology cannot be understated. and just with great appreciation that the city is starting to use the technology so that the users can have basically an online access. They can pay online, and it's just really much more easy to do business with the housing department for their fees and for their permits. And I do like the structure that you have created. I've taken a look at it, and I think it's pretty reasonable, and I like the fact that it is in what you're calling your buckets, so it's easy to discern as well. So again, I just think the simplification and the benefit from the whole process and from the use of the technology is great. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I'm glad that you're already out getting feedback, and you get a lot of support from, and if it's not support, then you try to make it better and say, well, they had some points there. Let's see if we can incorporate that. So that's feedback that makes a difference, which is great. I'm also happy to know, of course, that the data will be gathered and reassessed so that give a better handle. I listened to a podcast of civic professionals, and this one person had a point that if you have a shortage of low-income housing, the solution is not rental control or some other thing. The solution is to build low-income housing. That's the solution. And they recommended one thing is to try to keep the permitting costs low. That's one of those things that gets in the way of construction that we need to have done. We are doing well with construction right now, but it's always something to think about, as Mr. Callahan talked about tonight. Permitting is a substantial cost, and I'm glad that we're doing everything we can to just make this, we're just cutting, just becoming even and with our costs, and that's just an honest fee, and this is the best way to deliver that. So I agree with Ms. Farber and others who say, this is a great system, and we should start it and make changes as necessary. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Jones. Pretty much agree with everything said. This is a way better direction to go. If I were remaining on this council, I would hope and expect to see a summation annually in the budget presentation that tells us how it's working and what changes we're seeing on the cash flow side. But I think you got a good grip on this, and you've done a good job putting it together. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ms. Bethel.
The things I don't want to sacrifice. I don't want to sacrifice safety when it comes to building in our city, and I do not want building to stop.
Understood.
So when we talk about this delicate balance of creating consistent processes, which are so important, I would just ask Mr. Callahan and your peers, if you hear back, if there is feedback on the street about this process, I hope that you'll share it with council and staff, because I do want to know that we're getting it right. And we don't always get it right the first time, but we're trying. The things that I have also tried to educate myself on when it comes to, as a council member, what is my responsibility to ensure that we have housing in our community? Zoning, we have worked on it. We have tried to create incentives for building. And so whatever we can do with permitting to make a streamlined process for folks, the goal is not to charge more, it's to create efficiency that is effective and smart. So thank you for creating I'm sure this took so much time and energy for staff to do this, but in the end, I hope that the other side of it is that it will create efficiencies for a very long time to come. Thanks.
I also want to make sure that take a moment to thank the commission that worked so hard on this too. I know it's a fairly new commission. See a commission member here. I appreciate the fact that this is something that did go before them to be able to do this work. This is the kind of stuff I know they've been asking for too. So thank you for working with the commission closely to bring this before us. Okay, motion here is to receive and file and approve. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Action item number 7 is fire station building condition assessment and station location study.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Resnick.
I move to receive and file and approve.
Second.
Motion by Resnick, second by Jones. Mike, please.
Thank you. Fire Chief Amy Scheller is recommending City Council approval to proceed with issuing the request for proposals for consultant services, fire station building condition assessment and station location study, and to authorize the reallocation funds from an existing capital improvement project to support the consulting contract. The consultant will provide prioritized recommendations, cost estimates, and options for maintaining or improving station readiness and coverage in alignment with the community's growth, service demands, and strategic goals. Deliverables will include a final report and presentation to the city management and the city council by September of 2026. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request mayor and city council approval.
Thank you, Mike. Chief, I got some questions for you. Since you're here and you've hung out with us all night long, which we always appreciate, seems like your stuff comes up at the end of the night fairly often here, so we appreciate you sticking it out. My first question is just cost of this. If you could outline a little bit of what that cost is going to be. I know we're moving something from another line to this. Would just appreciate knowing a little bit more detail on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, Council, Mayor, Amy Scheller, Chief for the Dubuque Fire Department. The cost is assumed not to go over $100,000. That particular project that I had identified was exterior building maintenance, and that was at $188,000. So
Okay.
I don't expect it to hit $188,000.
Thank you. And my other question is, what have we been doing up to this point? Because we've been talking about this a lot. And, I know we had a fairly extensive discussion during our goal setting session where you were also in attendance and you kind of outlined a little bit of some of the data that we needed to collect. But could you say a little bit more about what we have done up to this point to get us to where we are now that we're going to start pushing forward on actually hiring the consultant and moving forward with this?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I think we've been doing quite a bit. If we look at some of the projects that have been approved for the last 3 years that I've been in this position, it was anywhere from kitchen remodels to bathroom remodels to generators to, I know you remember the storage sheds across all stations. So we're looking to be more efficient in the approach of building maintenance. I feel like I could chase my tail for the next 10 years just working projects. And I think using this consultant will make that a little bit more streamlined. I think it leans right into the station location study, in which we've been doing a lot of deep diving on as well. You know that you've approved some software that's very advanced that looks at the stations, looks at the responses, looks at our performance, makes recommendations, but I think this will be the culmination of all of that. So we're pretty excited about looking at the condition, what stations could be prioritized together to accomplish some of these, a little bit more efficiently.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Other questions, discussion? Yeah, Mr. Resnick.
I just wanted to mention there was an excellent article in the Telegraph Herald about this, which I think really explained very well to our residents about why this is necessary and how it's one of our top priorities here from the council. And safety, efficiency that you had mentioned, so many things that are important. The condition, you mentioned, there's so many things that are going to go into this study that we're going to have to consider and then find solutions for. But it's really important that we do this first to know what we're doing and the best way to do it. So thanks for bringing this forward. And I'm looking forward to increasing the safety of our residents and the efficiency of our spending. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Wethel.
I just wanted to say I appreciate that this council, to me in my time here, I have felt that public safety has been our priority. And that, I feel, has just continued forward in our most recent goal setting. Maybe even we've doubled down a little bit. This takes care of not just the safety of our community, but it looks at the safety and well-being of our firefighters. And to me, that's the long game. We need folks to be comfortable in the space that they have to live in while they're working for us and while they're serving their community. And we have done as much as we can, I feel, to, I don't want to say piecemeal it, but in a way take the priority projects that we are seeing and get them done. But in creating a budget, we need to do this in a very thoughtful, strategic way. And I feel like this is going to give us that ability and goal to be strategic and thoughtful and fiscally responsible. So thank you for bringing it to us. I'm excited to do it.
Thank you for the support. I agree.
Mr. Jones.
Yeah, thanks for this. I appreciate that you brought some more elements into this consideration, like the shape of the buildings and the capabilities of the buildings. We never really talked about that so much before. And this is definitely the right way to go. The last thing I want you to do all the time is figuring out this whack-a-mole game of where should stations be and how does this all work? Because I know you've got more pressing things, and the things that we've seen you accomplish in your short time with us have been pretty impressive. I'm disappointed I'm going to miss some of them. I'll be paying attention from a different perspective starting next year. But this is the right direction to go, and it's going to solve a lot of problems and preempt a lot of problems that won't happen because we've done it this direction. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Ms. Farber, yeah.
So I concur with what has been said, but I just wanted to bring in a point that the fire stations were built, as you said, 6 of them, between 1903 and 1979. So this is historic preservation at its finest. And I think it's just a great opportunity, as we had a conversation earlier about historic preservation, that we take a look at some things that are over 50 years old here to determine most efficient operations for the city and for the firefighters themselves. And also, I appreciated the information about the minutes to serve and the minutes to get to people's homes when you did that list for us, so we can, again, have a parameter and have some statistics to look at based on the study. And then as you determine where the stations, which should stay, which should go or not, that will be part of the process. So it's very data-driven, which I think is great. But again, this is really, I think, important for the city, as it does need to be upgraded, and we need to be a little more modernized, if you will. So thank you very much for bringing this to our attention.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So I see deliverable is September 26th is our goal for having a presentation back to us. The next steps, though, I mean, we'll be hearing about this pretty soon, right? I mean, you have a timeline for when the RFP is going to be back in front of us for approval?
Yes, yep. I believe November is when we wanted to release it, so January is a return.
Got it.
I'm pretty aggressive on dates, though, so I should probably give myself a little bit more time, maybe
February-ish.
December.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. All right. January, February-ish is kind of what we're looking at. Great. Well, thank you, Chief. Really appreciate it. Okay, motion here is to receive and file and approve. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber. Aye. Jones.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Action item number 8 is work session request for Parks and Recreation Comprehensive Master Plan Draft.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move that the council schedule a work session as requested on Monday, December 8th at 6 p.m. in these chambers.
Second by Farber.
Motion by Jones, second by Farber. This is an off week in between 2 meetings. Does it work for all of us? Mr. Resnick, please.
Maybe. So
Maybe.
right now, I have a recital scheduled up at UD, but I will try to make changes in that. But I just want to let you know that if I'm not there right at 6, I'll be there at 6:20.
Okay, gotcha. Noted publicly. Thank you very much, so we are aware.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd be happy to modify that motion to have the work session at 6:30 to make sure that it works for everybody.
Would you prefer that, or are you okay with showing up a little bit late?
I'm going to use my persuasive skills to try and get here at 6 o'clock, so.
Okay, all right.
I think we'll be all right, but I just want to let you know, if they're putting the hammer down, then I might be a little late.
I've seen you persuade. I have faith.
All right, so 6 p.m., December 8th, sounds like it works. All right, Adrian, just call the roll, please.
Farber.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0.
Next are council member reports.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Jones.
Well, since we last met, Tuesday, November 4th, I lost an election. Thursday the 6th, we had a ribbon cutting for the Public Safety Answering Point or 911 Center. That'll soon be occupied and functional. Spectacular upgrade. Yeah. And long overdue, but here it comes, and got to tip a hat to Harley Potoff, who, as much as anybody, made it happen, probably more than anybody, because it's a city-county partnership that's difficult to understand and difficult to operate, but here it is. Monday, November 10th, I was briefly at Envision 2030 before I went to a Sons of the American Legion meeting. Tuesday, the 11th, I was at the Veterans Day ceremony down at the Ice Center. It was really well done. Classy act. Thursday, the 13th, we had DMATs, then we had the Heart Open House on the Garfield. And what a nice project, oh my God. That was, talk about spectacular. And there were about quite a number of kids involved in it. Every one of them sanded every piece of wood in that place, because every one of them told me so. But I believed every one of them too. But what a great piece of work. And they not only sanded and stained and varnished all of this trim, they manufactured it in 3 parts. They did the millwork, they did everything on site. It's one of our best partnerships, because we got a group of kids who are going to enter adulthood without a meat and potato problem for the rest of their lives, because they've got solid skills in construction. We're putting a family in a nice new house in an old neighborhood. Neighbors are thrilled. Talked to quite a few of them out at that open house. And it's just win-win-win across the board. It solved some problems for the city. Got a decrepit house into a really gorgeous place to live. And lastly, last Friday, I was at ribbon cutting for longtime Dubuque business, J&J Pool Spa and Billiards. They've about, let's say, tripled their floor space for showroom, and just very nicely done. I do a lot of business with them. One thing about owning a pool is something's going to go wrong and you need somebody to help you fix it. They're pretty good at that. So that's what I've been up to for the last couple of weeks.
Thanks, Mr. Jones. Anybody else have anything to report? Mr. Sprank?
Yeah, since we last met, I want to thank the citizens that re-voted me back in for Ward 3. Thank you. And for those that didn't, you still know how to get a hold of me. I'm going to be around for a bit longer. After that, then I had my North End Neighborhood Association, my Point Neighborhood Association, and yeah, it's just wanting to be involved as much as I can in my community. So thank you.
Ms. Farber?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to a community leader who recently passed, Tammy Ryan. Attended the very beautiful and sincere memorial by family and friends for her, and just so touching and heartfelt, if you will, because there were so many people whose lives she touched. And she did pass at a very young age. So, but I just wanted to give a reminder as to public service and just being an extraordinary person she was. Thank you.
Ms. Farber. Ms. Wethel.
If we could just replicate what happened on Garfield about, I don't know, 50 houses a year, you know, the staff that supports the heart program were there, and they're just exceptional humans. But to be given a tour by someone who has put their heart and soul into doing that woodwork and painting and plaster and refurbishing of windows, it's just a very fulfilling experience. There's some experiences on council I've had where you just leave somewhere and you feel like your cup is full. Man, that was one of them. So, yeah.
Yeah, if anybody there was ticked off about anything, I sure couldn't find them.
I couldn't find them either, yeah. And then over the weekend, attended the attitude of gratitude for the Opening Doors organization and all of the good work that they do to create space and safe places for so many residents here in Dubuque who truly are transforming their own lives through the program that's available.
Thank you. Mr. Resnick.
Quickly, yes, I was, performed with the Loris Jazz Group at College Jazz Night. So we had Clark and we have Loris, and then UD groups were all there. And we were down at the Voices studio, and it was just a great night. I appreciate what Voices does and brings people in and really supports the arts, not just the visual arts. They have an art gallery there, but they bring people together, get the conversation going about arts in Dubuque, and then the college students had a great night. The usual concert is people are very quiet and they listen to every note that you play, and then politely applaud. But they were having a blast, talking and clapping and screaming and having a real jazz experience at a jazz club type atmosphere. So again, thank you to Voices, the Voices Studio, and I appreciate the young, enthusiastic jazz students at our local colleges. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Well, the one thing I'll point out before we go is just the room was full earlier tonight with a lot of excited people. And we just had an election that I'm pretty sure was the most people who ever voted in a local election in Dubuque ever. I don't know exactly what all came together, but something's going on. And I think to see it harnessed in the way like we saw tonight is, I think, a great indication of how that can lead to so much good, how so many people can be motivated and excited to be a part of their community. So I'm excited to see that continue. I think there's a lot of energy here right now, and I think if we can make sure that we keep pulling and pushing that in the direction of working together and really trying to build the best community that we possibly can, I think we have a lot of great people to do it. So I want to just thank everybody who keeps showing up. I think it's great to see that so often. We have a closed session, so I'll entertain a motion, please.
Happen to have one here.
All right,
Mr.
Mr.
Mayor,
Jones.
I move that the City Council go into closed session in accordance with Chapter 21.5 of the Code of Iowa to discuss confidential records, pending litigation, and potential sale or use or purchase of real estate.
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Resnick. For the record, the attorney the City Council will consult with on the issues to be discussed in closed session is City Attorney Crano Brumwell. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber. Jones.
Aye.
Wethel. Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Roussel.
Motion passes 7-0. We are in closed session.